Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live. It is Monday, June 15th. Thank you, everybody, for being here and being on the show. We are at the midway point of June. We got another 15 days left, and we will officially be done for the month, and then we will be headed into the 7th month of the year, which will be July. Kind of crazy how quick the year is moving. But nonetheless, we are covering the markets every single day, moving through this quick moving year. And, well, we've got some stocks that are moving pretty quickly in the pre-markets. We're greeny green. We are greeny green, and I think everyone knows why. But obviously today we will be discussing why we are so green. S&P 500 right there, up 751.12% right here in the pre-markets. We are 1.2% away from all-time highs. Iran and the United States have officially signed a deal. I know you've heard that headline a billion times. This time, I think it actually is true. And because of that headline being signed, it looks like we are going green across the board. Oil, almost below 80. We will talk about all the different corresponding macro factors. We had a bunch of different AI news happen over the weekend. Obviously, we had SpaceX on Friday as well. SpaceX up another 5% in the pre-market. So we will get into all the details of those deals and what it means for the broader equity markets. Obviously, the biggest macro news being that the war, it seems like, is officially over, which should be good for inflation. It should be good for oil prices coming down, and obviously should be good for the equity markets. On top of that, that is correct. We have indeed won the first championship in 53 years, baby. The Knicks are champions. It's kind of a crazy weekend, dude. We got the Iran deal on Sunday. We got the Knicks championship on Saturday. It was great. It was a great weekend. I didn't do the futures last night because it was my dad's birthday, so I was with my parents. But we're back here. We will not have the markets open this Friday, but we will have the markets open for the next 4 days, so it is going to be a little bit of a shorter week. Absolutely crazy weekend. Obviously, we've got a lot to talk about in the context of the macro. The Knicks game, for those that don't care about sports, probably doesn't matter to you. Obviously, got the World Cup going on, so that's super important. But for those that did care, it was a big game. We were down again by 15 points. Every game we've won, we've been down by 15 or more in either the third or fourth quarter, and we fought our way back. And, yeah, look, it was special. I've been a Knicks fan since 2011. I don't talk that much about sports anymore because my general attitude has been that if it's not really affecting my life, I'm not going to put that much energy into it. And back when I was in high school and middle school and trying to become, an NBA player, obviously that didn't work out. I wasn't even tall enough to think I could get there. But I had that dream that a young kid had, and I grew up in New Jersey. We had the New Jersey Nets, but they weren't good enough to get their own television station. So our local cable came with MSG Sports, which is Madison Square Garden Sports. And they showed Knicks games every day, especially every Friday. And so that's when I started becoming a fan of the New York Knicks. But then, once I realized by 2014, I was never going to be a basketball player, I stopped caring about basketball in general. So, it's not like I've kept up with the Knicks all season. It's not like I knew that much about them, but just seeing them in the finals again, those feelings of that kid that wanted to be a basketball player who was rooting for the Knicks, Carmelo, Jeremy Lin, Steve Novak, all these, Amari Stoudemire, all those OG players back in 2011. It brought back a lot of emotions. And then Jalen Brunson won the championship. And, in the postgame interview, your boy starts shedding some tears as I'm hearing him talk about what it took to get there. And my sister's on the couch and she turned over to me. She's like, "Are you crying?" I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Why do you have to?" She's like, "Are you crying?" She took out her phone. She started recording me. She's like, I've never seen you cry. Are you crying? I was like, "Yes, I'm crying. I feel for him, bro. He no one thought he was going to win. And he was counted out." And she was like, "Only basketball can make grown men cry." She's like, "You guys don't cry about anything else, but freaking other grown men putting a ball in a hoop will make you cry." I was legit crying. Look at this guy. Look at the sportsmanship. Look at this. This is when they won. Look at this. Look what he does immediately. He doesn't even celebrate. He goes to thank the other coach. I mean, talk about an A-class human being, bro. Just an A-class human. By the way, that Spurs home game looked like a Knicks home game. I mean, look at the amount of Knicks fans that were there. Everyone was celebrating. I love this guy. It was incredible. He deserves it. No one thought he would win. Everyone thought it was crazy for New York. By the way, I found he took $115 million less for them to have enough cap space, because you don't have an unlimited budget in the NBA, to sign other players. When I found that out, I loved him even more. I was like, that's what an NBA player should do. It's yeah, look, he could have made $240 million, but he made $113 million less because he realized to win, which is what really matters, right? That's what you care about as your legacy as an NBA player. you need to be able to sign other players. You need to be able to make those sacrifices. And he's going to make more than 113 million back now that he's a champion. I mean, the level of endorsements and different business opportunities he's going to have are going to be massive. And he brought a chip to the city. You know, he will go down as one of the greatest Knicks of all time. So exciting stuff. Did set some tears over the weekend. You guys are spamming the rainbow emojis, but I don't care, because when I heard him talk about his dad and his dad used to be a New York Knick and he ended up losing in 1999. You know, so like 27 years later, it brings it full circle. It, you know, makes you emotional. But there you go. New York. Congratulations to everybody. New York Knicks are champions again. All right, let's get into the markets. What do we got going on? We have a peace deal. I think maybe it's more legit than not, because Iran did corroborate and say that, yes, we have signed this. So I think this is it. Here we go. This is what Trump tweeted 30 minutes before futures came out. NVIDIA did dilute this morning. I'm actually very confused about NVIDIA, so we'll talk about NVIDIA. A little weird headline they had this morning, but we'll talk about it. The deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. Congratulations to all. I hereby fully authorize the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz and simultaneously herewith authorize the immediate removal of the United States naval blockade. Ships of the world, start your engines. Let the oil flow. President DJT. Okay, so this is supposed to be signed in Switzerland on Friday, this Friday, June 19th. As you can see, oil right there, getting ready to go below 80. It is good for tech stocks. It is good for airlines. It is good for cruise lines. It's good for pretty much any economic asset in the United States that indirectly or directly is affected by oil, which is everything, which is why the stock market's about to add $950 billion in market capitalization as soon as the market opens. Now, Iran has not officially signed this. The United States has not officially signed this. This is a quote-unquote memorandum of understanding. It is a collective framework that both sides have agreed to. Iran's Tanzim news agency came out with their spin of the news yesterday, and they basically said, we forced the United States to sign a peace deal. So they are implying that, you know, both sides have agreed to this. At least you don't have the back and forth of one side saying, we don't know what you're talking about, the other side saying, we signed a deal. Iran's news agency, you know, from the state media perspective, framed it in a different way, but whatever way you want to frame it at this point, I don't think anyone cares. The point is, it seems like they have come to an agreement, and this is what the draft MOU looks like. This is per Bloomberg. We don't have all the details yet. Quite frankly, we don't have any details. I mean, Trump did not give any details. Iran did not give any details. Everyone's speculating stuff. I think next Friday in Geneva, we're probably going to get some more details. Hopefully, we actually get a deal signing on Friday. If we don't, we have to deal with all this hoopla again. We almost had to deal with some issues yesterday. I mean, you had Israel attack Lebanon again, and Trump was pissed. Like, he was pissed. He didn't publicly say it, but he called up one of the Fox News reporters and he started cursing. He says, why the F did Bibi do this? You know, yada, yada. So that almost stalled the deal in the morning, but thankfully they ended up resolving it. And I think the United States promised Israel would be under control. So I don't know what they said to get them to agree to it, but as soon as Iran state media said, we forced the United States to sign a peace deal, that's when I knew, okay, this should hopefully be in place. And this is what you're looking at. So Iran will commit to not pursue a nuclear weapon. U.S. commits to temporarily waiving sanctions. U.S. commits to releasing some of the frozen assets. U.S. military presence will withdraw from the Strait of Hormuz. The war will be ended on all fronts. Missiles and proxies will not be included. So you have all these different elements. I think the core thing that we're waiting for is the timeline on how long is Iran going to be hurt from this. How long Iran is going to agree to stopping the proliferation of nuclear weapons or the ability to create a nuclear weapon. And is that going to involve particular specifics on uranium enrichment? No one knows about that. We don't know exactly how much the sanctions are going to be relieved from the U.S. side. I think it should be a relatively strong amount. And as long as that's the case, then I guess that's your deal. Now, the broader political questions of, was this worth it? Did we need to go through all this fighting over the past 3 months? Did we actually get anything out of that? Quite frankly, those are political questions. Once again, I don't even care anymore. I'm so done with analyzing this war and why this matters or not. Like, I don't care. All I care about is, what is the impact on the economy? And if the war is officially over, whether the United States won, whether Iran won, you know, the talking heads can debate that. All I care about is the Strait of Hormuz open. Does the free path of oil for 20% of crude exports, is that sustainable anymore? And will this result in a more economically friendly agenda for the United States? And I think the answer to all those questions are yes. And it's funny, you know, because on Thursday, Trump said he was going to bomb Kharg Island. And it's almost like no one believed it. The market didn't believe it. Oil didn't believe it. And once he finally came out later that day and said, I'm not actually going to do that, we're close to a deal, everything spiked. And that's when oil fell 5%. Then oil fell another 5% last night. And it made it more obvious that, okay, this is coming to the end game. And if this is coming to the end game, then hopefully we never have to worry about this in this context for the foreseeable future until the next big geopolitical conflict, which hopefully won't happen for a long time. So there you go. I mean, if you're wondering why your portfolio is super green right now, or if it's super red if you're short, this is the reason. You know, what happened over the weekend, once again, reminded me, it just sucks to be a bear. It really does. And you know, you have to go through the criticism of being called a perma bull all the time, which I think me, Tanner, Steve, Jason, we tend to be perma bulls. Now, that doesn't mean we can't be analytically critical of certain things that are happening in the moment, or certain stocks or certain moves, or we're questioning, hey, what's the different perspective here? You always have to have that different skeptical perspective because it allows you to have a more holistic view of what's happening. But net, we tend to be more bullish because it's like the bears can sound smart because there's always something to be afraid about. But at the end of the day, you have someone in the White House who is literally judging the basis of his presidency on if these numbers on the screen go higher. And when you have someone like that, they're not saying we can't get a correction, not saying we're out of the woods, not saying we can't have a blow off top over the next couple months and summer's a little ugly. Like, all that stuff could happen. It's just he's going to engage in creative chaos, and he's going to want to be seen as the savior of that chaos. We've seen this happen through the tariffs in, quite frankly, a much more exaggerated way than we've even seen it happen in the Iran war. And at the end of the day, if you've got an earnings story backing up stocks and you have a tech revolution that is not a bubble, you know, if you think it's a bubble, it's a different question, but if it's not a bubble and you have the earnings to back it up and you've got someone in the White House who's super supportive of it, you're likely going to have names that tend to make a move higher. And I think that's what we're seeing right now in the pre-market. And that's why, you know, it's a bit more exciting. And again, I think this was one of the years where, or one of the moments where people got really scared in March for good reasons, because, you know, the Iran war seemed very scary. But the tariffs also seemed very scary. And it was just a question of, could you look past that initial outlook and see, you know, what Trump would do going further? And again, I think there could be plenty of bear cases in the summer to get the markets to come down. We don't need to see, you know, a lot of these names spike up another 10, 15% from here over the coming months. But net, is there a macro catalyst that is as bad as the Iran war? I don't think it's there anymore. I mean, people can say private credit, people can say labor market, people can say inflation, although inflation should not be that big of a concern. There's a lot of things that could be ugly, but if you believe in some of the broader macro themes around AI, CapEx, et cetera, I think we get to sustain it. Doesn't mean everything's a great buy right here. Doesn't mean ARM at 400 was a great buy. ARM right here going a little red, 385 right now. But it does mean that there are macro tailwinds, and those macro tailwinds could be respected. Amcor right there up 7% the pre-market. That's going green. Roku's getting bought out by Fox, by the way. Fox is the mystery buyer. Fox is buying them for $22 billion. I think the deal makes sense for Fox. I think it's a horrible deal for Roku because Roku's not even getting back to anywhere close to where it was back in 2021. It was at $490. Now, one could argue that 2021 prices never made any sense in the first place. But decent deal for Fox. They get to vertically integrate more streaming and advertising. I think it's kind of an okay deal for Roku, not amazing, but nonetheless, that's why that's up, as Fox is going to be buying them. Yes, we have an FOMC meeting on Wednesday. That's another bear case theoretically to think about. This is what Tom Lee's been saying, which is that the Fed is tested by the market every time there's a new Fed chair. 10 out of the last 13 new Fed chairs, you did have an average of a 12% drawdown in the midst of their first 180 days of being a Fed chair. So historically, that could be another macro headwind that we have to deal with. But if you've got oil coming down substantially, Kevin Warsh is going to be able to paint a picture that is more friendly around the idea of getting those rate cuts. And maybe that's something that the market's going to like. SoFi is definitely going to like it. SoFi is up in the pre-market. By the way, Robinhood, SoFi 17 right there. Robinhood's got some tailwinds, baby. This thing is $2 away from seeing triple digits again. And one of the biggest tailwinds we haven't talked about is the World Cup. I did not, I'm not that deep into the World Cup. I've never cared that much about the World Cup, but I probably should a lot more, because the amount of trading volumes on the World Cup globally, it was like 20 billion yesterday. It's crazy. Robinhood just has to get a small piece of that on their platform, and they're going to print hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue in the next 3 months based on those prediction markets. So I think that is kind of the tailwind that the street is getting excited about. 97.75. It's really diverged from Bitcoin. If Bitcoin and Robinhood were actually pegged together the way it was back in April and March, Robinhood would be $75 right now. So the fact, or probably even lower, to be honest, because Bitcoin is still lower than 70,000. So the fact that it is completely diverged, at least in the short term, is very exciting. Bitcoin right there, 66.4. But that is why Robinhood is getting a bullish move. Okay, NVIDIA. So what do they do today? This is actually very confusing to me. I don't get it. I mean, I do get it, but I'm also a little iffy about it. So Nvidia diluted by 20 billion, not through equity, but they're planning to raise 20 billion from high grade bonds. So similar to what Google's been doing, what Microsoft's been doing. It's going to be a 7-part bond sale. They're going to be raising 20 billion of debt, levering up. So it's not like immediate dilution that's going to hit you right there. And I imagine they're going to use this either to buy back their stock or to backstop more deals like they've done with CoreWeave and Nebius and all those companies to be able to make sure that the neoclouds are continuing to grow. The confusion here is that they already have so much cash and they're making so much cash. So this part, this is why NVIDIA is dropping a little bit pre-market. I think this headline Street didn't love 210 to 207 right here. I am a little perplexed by this. Now, I shouldn't be that confused because at the end of the day, why are they doing this? Because they're going to use the money to support the ecosystem or to, get money at a cheap rate to be able to do any of the internal financial things they need to do, like buy back stock. But they have enough money to do that. In fact, they have more than enough money to the point where they don't even know what to do with it, which is why they increased the dividend by 2,500%. So I guess they think the rates are cheap enough to issue this debt, or maybe they're getting a really good deal because it's NVIDIA at the end of the day. What bank on the world would not lend to NVIDIA? But I am curious to see some of the specifics on what rate they got, why they're doing it, and what exactly is the purpose of it, given they have, so much money. But that part's a little confusing to me. I want to get some more details from that later throughout the day. Yeah, as Austin says, they have under 20 billion in free cash flow. But there you go. That's what you got from NVIDIA. That was one of the headlines that we had this morning. Obviously, the big headline here is that the war with Iran is officially over. Let's do a poll in the chat and see exactly if people agree with this idea, war being over. So the question's going to be, we have JD who was just on. Let's go to him. Do you think the MOU will be signed by Friday? Yes or no? Okay, JD was on. Let's see what say about this MOU officially being agreed to.
Two very big wins for the American people. I think the important thing to understand is that the agreement is fundamentally built around a two-step verification process. We say to the Iranians, you are welcome to have access to an unsanctioned economy. You're welcome to be reinvited into the world economy, but only if you honor the commitments that you make in this agreement. So that's the leverage point and simultaneously the enforcement mechanism we have over their nuclear program. And if you step back, the last point that I'd make about this is that we have affirmatively and comprehensively destroyed their nuclear program from what we've done over the last year and a half in the Trump administration. What this agreement does is say to the Iranians that you don't have access to the money to rebuild that nuclear program, but if you're willing to give up that program long term, if you're willing to accept the inspections and verification regime that's necessary to give us the confidence you're never going to have a nuclear weapon, then we want you to be a prosperous country and we will reinvite you into the community of nations. And that's fundamentally the two-step process, the choice the Iranians have to make. Do they want access to the world economy? If so, they're going to have to give up the long-term nuclear ambition. If they don't want access to the world economy and they don't give up that ambition, they're never going to have the resources to rebuild it from where it is today. So it's a big win for the American people. And I think the Iranians fundamentally have a good choice here in front of them, whether to be a normal country or whether to be a country that continues to pursue a nuclear weapon, which they now have no capacity to do.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand this, though. This is 60 days that they will have to kind of discuss and debate the issues surrounding the nuclear question. But for now, they are saying that they will reopen the strait. The United States is saying it will take down its blockade at the same time, that there will be free passage, that no one will have to pay anything to go back and forth through this. The Iranians, I think, have suggested that this is just for the next 60 days. Do you get the sense that this is a more permanent situation where the strait will be reopened even beyond that 60-day period?
Well, our expectation is that the strait is going to be opened in a toll-free way for the long term. And that's the sort of thing that we're going to figure out in these technical negotiations. You know, that there are a lot of very important details to figure out that we're actually going to sit at the table and discuss together and figure out a path forward on these details. For example, they've committed to destroy and dispose of their stockpile of highly enriched material. That's the highly enriched uranium that they accumulated over the Obama administration and over the Biden administration. And what we've said is, okay, let's talk about how exactly we're going to do that. They want access to an unsanctioned economy. We've talked about, okay, we're open to that, but that would require a long-term commitment to the inspection and verification regime that I just talked about. So a lot of these details are going to be figured out during those 60-day talks. We feel quite confident that we're in a strong position here. Fundamentally, we have the leverage. We have the diplomatic, economic, and military leverage, but we also are extending an open hand to the Iranians and saying, if you guys negotiate in good faith and you make that long-term commitment not to develop nuclear weapons, then we are going to make sure that your country is successful. If, however, you refuse to meet us halfway, then we're going to continue to apply the pressure that we've seen build up economically in particular, and that's going to be bad for them and fundamentally.
So JD's basically saying, look, they've agreed in principle to what we want them to do, but they haven't practically agreed to it, which is why he's adding this kind of if-then statement. If they don't do this, then we will go back to fighting. I would imagine Trump really doesn't want to go back to fighting. So hopefully June 19th and Friday, they actually sign something that is much more legitimate, even if it's just a conceptual framework to get to something that's much more legitimate. But hopefully both sides are just ready to move on from this at this point.
Mentally, it's going to be bad for the region. So we hope they make the right choice. We feel pretty confident about where we are, and we're to just sit down and talk with them and see where they're willing to concede, where they're willing to make concessions, and make some progress from there.
Yeah, that sounds like he's still negotiating, right? We're going to sit down with them, talk, see what concessions that sounds like. Is that just me, or that sounds like there's still a lot of negotiations left to be done? Nonetheless, they've officially announced this deal is here. So, when you think about leverage from both sides, I don't know how much leverage we have if we've officially announced it to the entire world. Oil's down a lot. So I would hope whatever's left to negotiate does not cause a thorn up each other's sides to be able to actually get the deal and make it happen officially.
Who's going to be signing this agreement on Friday from the United States and from the Iranian side of things? Because there's been a lot of questions about who's in charge in Iran and whether, when we're talking to someone, whether they represent all of those parties.
Well, one of the interesting things about what's happened just over the last few months is that our relationship with Iran has fundamentally transformed. You hear the president talk about the fact that we're dealing with a totally different group of people. That's absolutely true. If you go back to the Obama administration, we never had the direct line. Really, over the past 47 years, we've never had this level of direct connection where the people at the highest levels of the United States government are talking to the people at the highest levels of the Iranian government. We expect the negotiating team from the Iranian side is going to be the Speaker of the House, Ghalibaf, and also the Foreign Minister Arachi, along with a number of security officials and people who represent the different constituencies within their country. But we actually see, this is a very interesting thing about these negotiations, is you see people, both the hardliners, but also the more political people, saying our relationship with the United States over the past 47 years has been a mistake. Let's turn over a new leaf. We're, of course, going to verify that they actually mean it. But if they're willing to turn over a new leaf, the president of the United States has said we want them to be a successful country, and that's what we're aiming to negotiate towards.
Okay, so that obviously doesn't fully sound like everything has been agreed to. I mean, the vice president is literally saying we're going to sit down with them and see what concessions they're willing to take. I think what they've agreed to over the weekend is enough conceptual elements of what both sides want to have in principle, which was enough for Trump to be able to say on his birthday, which was yesterday, that we've signed the deal, which I think he really wanted to do. Get the stock market pumping, get oil to come down. And now when they get to that table in Geneva, they quite literally just need to agree on something at this point for a deal to be signed. Robin, right there, 98.54 in the pre-markets. And if they don't, I can't imagine we go back to fighting. I can't imagine they go back to closing the Strait of Hormuz and then Trump does a naval blockade. Like, that just seems like it's out of the question. I mean, it could happen theoretically, but I don't think the U.S. wants that to happen. I don't think Iran wants that to happen either. So they're going to have to capitulate. Both sides are not going to get everything they want. And the quality of the deal, again, the political experts can debate that. But as long as oil continues to flow freely, that's all we should care about when it comes to the markets. Trump just tweeted, ships are starting to move, many loaded up with oil out of the Strait of Hormuz. They're going along the Southern Highway, which is totally safe, secure, and pristine. There are other areas of travel also. President DJT. All right, folks, that's what you got. About 50% of you say no, the memorandum of understanding will not be signed by Friday. So let's do another poll, green or red today. It would be hard to imagine to see this market flip red on a 1.5% move. I mean, you could see it happening, but man, this is a lot of good news that's being baked into a lot of stocks. I mean, pretty much everything is green. It's really hard to find a name that's red right now. Applied Digital, Fluence Energy, Clover, Apple, T1 Energy, Shopify, GE Vernova, SpaceX, which we can now talk about because it's public. That's up 5%. You have a new 2x long SpaceX ETF, SPCU, and short SPCQ. So the leveraged SpaceX ETFs are officially out. Mr. Ron Barron bought another $1 billion worth of it on Friday. Did have a very successful IPO debut. Here's what he had to say about his SpaceX stake.
Ron Barron. He is the founder, the CEO, and portfolio manager of Barron Capital. Ron, of course, is a longtime backer and believer in Elon Musk. He's a major SpaceX shareholder, and he's been there for many years. Ron, welcome. It's great to see you today.
It's great to be with you.
So SpaceX is your largest holding in all of the Barron funds. I think you started buying in 2017. As of Friday, you had how much in shares of SpaceX?
$24 billion
That's across all the funds?
across all the funds.
Across all the funds, and that was
I'm
as
not
of
sure
the
if it's
open or the
24 or
close?
25 billion because we bought another billion on Friday.
Okay, so 25 billion, and that was as of Friday's close before
Right.
this morning's gains?
Yeah. I think we're going to make hundreds of billions of dollars, but hundreds. But before that, I was on Friday evening speaking to Elon and to Dan Dees, who is the person at Goldman Sachs who is husbanding this deal. And I was congratulating Dan on what an incredible job Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan have done with this underwriting. An incredible job, figuring out the allocation of it, figuring out how to stabilize the market, doing pricing it appropriately. I mean, it's amazing.
What did Elon have to say?
So when I was talking to him, one of the things I kept thinking about is after what he's accomplished so far, which everyone thought was not only improbable, but impossible, he's being congratulated on this. And I'm thinking about from his point of view, he said, this is just getting started. This is just where we're starting of what this business is going to become. And when I was looking this morning on the news, it said that he thought that we'd do $1 trillion of revenues in 2030, trillion. And last year was 19 billion, so 50 times by 2030. And when I think about the opportunities this company has and how no one else, all you have to do is get the prospectus. It's 500 pages, so it's not that easy to go through. And it used to be they would give you red herrings, and there were little books you could go through it and you could easily mark it up. But now, when I'm looking at these prospectuses, I have a prospectus like that, 500 pages, and you go through it. It's so hard to do it. But if you read that and you get probably 20, 30, 40 pages in, you realize what they've done isn't possible for anyone else to accomplish. Not possible. And so he's at least 10 years ahead of everyone else as far as making satellites, as far as making rockets, as far as building networks. I mean, the opportunities that they have to change everyone's life, changing lives.
Do you think he felt a sense of satisfaction on Friday? Because obviously he's not driven by the same things as everybody else.
Well, if you're worth $1 trillion or $2 or $3 trillion or $5, what difference does it make? and that's not what he's interested in. He's trying to save humanity. And when I was listening to the interview that he did with Jamie Dimon on Friday night, I guess it was, or Thursday night for the roadshow in the JP Morgan headquarters. By the way, JP Morgan, that's the most incredible building I've ever been in my life. And so I was listening to the interview, and the last question was, so Elon, every time I talk with you, I learn something. Every time I talk with you, I learn something. And so what do you think about this? And he says, well, I'm hoping that some future AI will say, not a bad job for human. So his goal is not the way other people's goals are outlined. And so when he's talking about what he's done so far, that's just the beginning. And
so that's Ron Barron on the IPO of SpaceX. Elon commented over the weekend, I think SpaceX might be able to reach approximately $1 trillion in revenue by 2030. And I would be surprised if revenue is not greater than $1 trillion in 2031. The market capitalization of SpaceX when it opens is going to be about $2.15 trillion, which means he thinks that SpaceX is trading at 1 times sales if you look at 2030 numbers. I I think the only way this happens, if we're going to be honest, is if they get the merger with Tesla. I mean, maybe SpaceX is able to grow revenues 50 times in the next 4 years. It's not that easy to grow revenue by 5,000% in 4 years. Not many companies are able to do that, especially unless you have like an NVIDIA GPU type of moment in 2023. But I think if he buys Tesla and Optimus ends up scaling in the next couple of years, there might be a world in which it's possible. But it would really happen if they end up buying Tesla. So obviously, Elon's pretty excited. He's hyping it up. He's putting out these salacious comments that they could get to $1 trillion in revenue. Right now, they are doing about 20 billion in revenue. So there's a lot of growth they would need to have to get there. But if investors believe in that, and some investors, do believe in that, that is why the valuation of this company seems like it makes sense. And I wonder, Tesla's valuation has never fully, quote unquote, made sense to a lot of people, but it's been able to hold that PE. Maybe SpaceX is able to do that for the corresponding years. And when they merge, you just have this mega company that is out there. SpaceX right there, 169.98. It's going to be very interesting because this thing hit 176 at the high of day on Friday. Then it collapsed all the way back down to 160. So you had a lot of sellers at, I think, around basically 2.3 trillion that said enough is enough. We're taking profits here. And I wonder today if it can get through those levels or if it kind of chills out in this 160 level. Now, we had another big piece of news over the weekend, which was also really important, kind of went under the radar given the Trump-Iran stuff that came out, but it had to deal with Anthropic. And it's actually very, very important for the neoclouds. Before we get into that real quick, just want to show you guys this clip. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, the second largest company on the planet, tried to give a commencement address at one of the nation's finest institutions called Stanford. And here's what the lovely Stanford graduates did. They walked out because they did not want to hear from Mr. Sundar Pichai. I wonder how many of them accepted a job offer to Google, by the way. So there's two reasons for this. Number one, we saw the same happen with Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, at a different commencement speech because he was talking about AI, and a lot of 22-year-olds apparently think AI is the worst thing in the world, and they don't want to hear about that. The other reason is because Google has a contract with Israel. You can see some of the Palestine flags right there, and they were protesting those IDF contracts. So it goes to show, once again, in the age of abundance, in the age of excitement, in the age of Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire, you still have so many people that are relatively young that do not like where the world is going, do not like how tech is evolving. Out of all places, it's in Stanford, right at the heart of Silicon Valley. And that is going to bring up some political problems over the coming years. I mean, I think it would be silly to ignore how the youth of this generation, not all of them, but a decent chunk of them, are thinking about the way politics are interacting. And that gets you to the conversation around, stopping data center construction and really stopping AI progress at scale, and how much political will is out there to keep that going. Speaking of stopping data center progress, this will definitely not be good for data centers if this officially goes through. Anthropic on Friday night, the U.S. government, citing national security authorities, has issued an export control directive to suspend all access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 by any foreign national, whether inside or outside the United States, including foreign national Anthropic employees. The net effect of this order is that we must abruptly disable Fable 5 and Mythos 5 for all of our customers to ensure compliance. Access to all their Claude models will not be affected, and they then apologize for why this is happening. Now, this got 88 million views, this announcement. Obviously, a lot of people were upset about this. I never got a chance to use Fable 5 because I think it came out for a couple of days, but the people that I talked to that used Fable 5 were devastated by this. I mean, basically, they said it was the only model they never had to, curse at and get upset at because the model was just that good. Again, I never got a chance to use it, but it is officially banned right now on Anthropic's website. The reason this is so bullish for the neo clouds is because if there's a couple of pieces of logic right here. If all top AI models become export controlled, which is probably not going to happen, but let's say the perception of this could say that could happen, countries and companies will want their own AI infrastructure. That means demand is going to be shifting from just using Anthropic and OpenAI's API to building or hosting our own models. Many of that happening on-prem. That's what the neoclouds sell, GPU capacity. They benefit if more companies want dedicated AI compute, essentially, instead of only buying access to closed model APIs. It strengthens the case for regional AI clouds. It basically makes the case for open source self-hosted models, which a lot of these neoclouds are running. I mean, the Nebius founders over the weekend did a couple podcasts, and they were talking about the efficiency of the generation of tokens. And they specifically, Roman said he does not want to see a few hyperscalers or a few model companies control access to where all the compute and token generation is coming from, because if it's not as distributed, it's not as democratized, which means, you know, the supply and demand imbalance and quite frankly the pricing power, it kind of becomes a memory story where there's 3 companies that control all the memory and you need the memory, and so their prices go through the roof, and you don't want that to see that happening. So actually very bullish, for DigitalOcean, CoreWeave, Nebius, Cypher. I mean, all these companies, all the, obviously SpaceX, because now they're basically the largest neocloud. All the neoclouds that are out there, as you see AI models and compute become a bit more open source and distributed, it technically should be a tailwind for them. Now, Nebius and CoreWeave are also getting into the NASDAQ 100, which is a big tailwind, and they kind of sold off on Friday, which was surprising, and I think they're getting the benefit of that bid right now. CoreWeave right there at 105. Nebius just a massive move from 204 to 250. But theoretically, this should be good for all of them. It is very interesting to me, though, the idea that Anthropic's been going back and forth with the United States for a long time. Ironically, Anthropic's been painting this doomeristic picture around AI for forever. And now the government's like, okay, if you want to be doomeristic about AI, boom, we're going to be doomeristic about AI. We don't want anyone to have access to this model if they're a foreign person, which means you have to close off the entire model for everybody until you figure this out. So it's kind of one of those things where people are like, well, if Anthropic's going to paint the worst picture on the planet for how AI enables itself, then, you know, if the US government responds, it's kind of on them because they've painted this narrative of it being the worst thing in the world. Practically, though, a lot of people are upset because Fable was really good. Friedberg also kind of went off on the Olin pod over the weekend, basically making the case this idea of Dario saying all jobs are going to be taken away because of AI is absolute nonsense.
So we are going to hire more people. And to Sachs's point, we are seeing that show up in the jobs numbers. The idea that AI is going to destroy jobs is a Luddite idea that is being disproven every single day. And I see it on the ground. It is only a matter of time before people wake up to this and they realize that this narrative that they've all been sold is a crock of shit. So it's coming. I'm telling you, everyone's going to realize soon that this is a boom, not a bust.
So you disagree with Dario?
I think the jury is still out on that, if it's a boom, not a bust in terms of labor. I think every time we see a headline like Amazon getting rid of 30,000 people, Meta getting rid of 8,000 people, you start to feel more scared about the nature of the labor market. But practically, to Friedberg's point, we have not had labor market data that is bad. If anything, last Friday, we had labor market data that was so good that the market went down, which is really funny when you think about it now, 2 weeks later when oil is at 80. And so, like, jobless claims, they're not showing up. Non-farm payrolls, they're not showing up. ADP private payrolls, they're not showing up. JOLTS, they're not showing up. Unless all those levels of data are fake, then you would imagine that AI is actually leading to more productivity, more jobs, and hopefully that continues over the coming years. And if that's the case, then, you know, maybe that's not going to be the worst thing in the world. 751.82 right there on the S&P 500. We got 5 minutes until the market opens. You got Bitcoin coming back, folks. You got a lot of assets that are absolutely loving this run. AMD, this thing was at 430 last week, 535. Roku again getting bought out by Fox. That's why that's up 20% from Friday. AppLovin, that's up 2%. PayPal's up 1%. Visa's up a little bit. Microsoft's up a little bit. Today's the last day for the stock draft as well. So I am currently in first place, but if Space has a really good day, then Matt could catch up. He's at 53%. I'm at 65. Steve's at 54. Tanner's at 11. Chris is at 40. So today is officially the last day for the draft, and it'll determine the order of the new draft. The new draft will be on Saturday, June 20th, this weekend. So this weekend, we will be doing the new draft, and whoever wins this first draft gets first pick in the next draft. But a year later, we talked about the stock draft last week. A year later, what helped everyone's portfolios? It was the AI plays. AMD and Nebius for me, Marvell and Oracle for Chris, Steve, Broadcom and Micron. For Tanner, you had NVIDIA, TSM. I mean, the names that ended up helping all of us were the semiconductor names and the CapEx names. And it feels like every dip on those simply becomes an opportunity to have more exposure to the greatest AI build-out we've ever had in history. And if that build-out does not slow down, I mean, even the software names pre-market, they're not up that much. Like Palantir is at 129.97. It can't even break through 130, 132 in the pre-market, which really sucks. Same thing with Zeta, barely breaking through 20. IGV, you know, it's up 1.7. It was down 10% last week, but the semiconductor names are going crazy. So I wonder, SMH back to 643, I wonder when the market opens over the next few days, is this going to be once again a high beta semiconductor rally? Is this going to be more distributed across the software and fintech names? Is this going to be isolated to different sectors of the value names like your Verizons, your Home Depots, your Caterpillars? Are those going to be kind of muted in terms of the reaction? Your Ethereums, your Bitcoins, they're getting a little bit of love right here. Ethereum up 5%, Bitcoin up 1.4%. Oh, MicroStrategy, by the way, bought some Bitcoin again. They bought another, I think, 1,500 Bitcoin this morning. 1587. So I wonder how distributed this rally is once again going to be, or if it's going to be back in the semis, which have continued to win. And at this point, I think at the end of the day, as much as we think certain names are undervalued, if we're having a really massive bull market, it's those semiconductor names. Even if some of the valuations aren't the most sustainable, that are the ones that are winning. And I think long term, you'll start to see that diversify into all the different other sectors that people care about. But it's like slowly happening. Fintech is not coming back entirely, but Robinhood has started to come back a bit, right? So you've got different names inside of different sectors. Software hasn't fully come back, but your Datadogs, your Snowflakes had some massive runs a couple of weeks ago. So I think a lot of these names, it's going to take some time for them to come back. But semis, neoclouds, those are the story of this market. NVIDIA not included necessarily, because NVIDIA, I guess just too big to move. But even that up a little bit in the pre-market, even after the $20 billion of debt that they offered. Robinhood right there, that's up 6%. We got 2 minutes until the market opens. I think it has a date with triple digits. Again, someone asked me yesterday, why is Robinhood moving so much versus SoFi? Again, I'm bullish on both, long both. I think SoFi needs the rate cuts to really become part of the underlying thesis to get the stock to move up. Anthony Noto said that on our podcast, and you're going to need to see that happen with oil continuing to come down, rate cut expectations getting baked in. Robinhood doesn't necessarily need rate cuts. Robinhood can tap into the agentic tailwind. Robinhood can tap into the Trump account tailwind. Robinhood can tap into the prediction markets tailwind with the World Cup. I mean, there's so many things that allow them to get judged on a price to earnings basis as a tech company that SoFi really doesn't have access to at this moment of time. It's more about their multiple intangible book, and that requires rates to come down. And so I think that's the difference between the divergence of those two prices. Robinhood is just a bit more high beta, but nonetheless, you're having elements of different fintechs pop out, which is very exciting. Robinhood needs crypto. Well, I thought Robinhood needed crypto, but over the past month, crypto's gone down and Hood's gone up. So maybe, just maybe, the stock is diverging, and hopefully, it will continue to diverge. All right, here we go, folks. It is Monday, June 15th. Once again, it is time to open up the markets after the first official deal is signed with Iran. The stock market is now open. All right, let's wake your ass up and get into it. S&P 500, 752. As that goes green, 1.385%. Zeta, that's up. Palantir, 131, that's up. CoreWeave, that's up. Nebius, 251, that's up 8%. SpaceX, 173. Did Hood hit 100 already? Did it happen that quickly? Wow, there it is. We are finally back, bro. It has been so long. February was the last time we saw triple digits on this thing. It touched it for a second, then it went back down. Let's see if we can break through. There it is. Once again, seeing those beautiful triple digits. Hopefully we can hold it for the day. Robinhood right there. Again, getting a lot of love. I think that World Cup prediction markets thesis is really playing out as the volume starts to grow exponentially on that. Amcor, 88.54. That's up 6.7%. AppLovin, that's up 3.4%. Rocket Lab, which got hit on Friday. All the space names got hit badly, like 10, 15% down badly. On the SpaceX IPO. Those are getting a little bit more love. ASTS, that's up about 3%. You got NVIDIA, 209, even after the $20 billion of dilution this morning in high-grade debt. That's up 2.3%. SoFi, 1720, that's green. Micron, I think, is at all-time highs. I think that's pretty much all-time highs, or that's very close. 1,089 is all-time highs. You're at 1,070 on Mr. Micron. Lemonade, that's up 5%. BlackBerry, that's up 2.4%. Applied Digital, that's up 5.3%. Did Microsoft actually go red? Microsoft is very close to going, well, it's not necessarily red. It's still up 1%, but it's losing a lot of its pre-market action. How about Google? Google is losing a little bit of its pre-market action. Still got some red candles right there, but 369, almost 370. Robinhood 99, ASTS 84, Palantir 130, 174. Seagate should be up along with Western Digital. Yep, Seagate, wow, 10% as memory continues to go higher. S&P 500 up 1.3%. That is green. Western Digital, that is also green by 12%. Ouster, that's up 18%. This is your LiDAR robotics play. That's getting some love. ARM started going red pre-market. ARM is continuing to go red as the market opens, 375. Dell was green pre-market. Dell is now very close to going red, 401. ASTS, a red candle right there. You're still green. S&P, though, 1.5%. Folks, we are less than 1% away to all-time highs on the S&P. So you have a pretty aggressive green candle at the open right there, 753 almost. AMD, again, that continues to hold on to 540, 546. This year has been characterized simply through the high beta tech names in the semiconductor space that don't have market caps that are impossible to move. And whether it's an AMD, whether it's a Seagate, whether it's a Micron, those are your winners. Adobe getting a little bit of love. This was below 200 on Friday. ServiceNow getting a little bit of love. Again, the software names, they're up, but they're not up as much as the semiconductor names. Meta getting a nice little boost right there, 3.5%. That's a pretty decent chunk for Meta, given it's been stuck in the 560s, 585. We can get back above 600. That would be nice. Where is Tesla? I think it's above 400. We are above 400, 414, and then SpaceX, 171. Okay, so 175 got rejected. 176.52 on Friday got rejected. So that 175 layer is kind of where the sellers won't let it get above. We need to see if there's room to get above that throughout the day. Qualcomm, this was 192 on Friday or on Thursday. Now 219. That's green. Marvell, almost 300. That is green. Ciena, that's up 7%. That's green. Credo, that's green. Lumentum, this was almost below 800 last week. That is green. Webull, that's up 6%. Mercado Libre, that's up 3%. Grab is up 4%. Corning is up 5.3%. Bloom Energy, this was pushing below 230 last week, 274. That's still up 5.58%. Is AMD in a new all-time high? AMD, yeah, we did. 549, which it just touched, was your new all-time high officially for AMD. 600 gives you $1 trillion. 600 gives you $1 trillion. Is Reddit flying? Reddit is nicely getting a 6% move. This was stuck in the pre-market, so nice to see this breakout as the market is open. Google trying to get back to 370. Microsoft trying to push 400. Micron down a little bit from its high. Same thing with Hood, just below 100. Yeah, I think all the insider buying from Hood as well, it was kind of a sign, right? Like $50 million worth of purchases at $80. The guy who bought it is up 20% now. And, you know, it was kind of easier to trail knowing an insider had that much conviction, but hopefully this can stay up. AMD 547 as that goes green. So you're not seeing everything get a massive bid. ARM is down. Zeta's down. Lunar's down. United Health is down, which kind of makes sense. More of a value play. That one's getting hit. Keel's up 5%. Rocket Lab's holding on to about 109. ASTS getting a couple of red candles. Some of your software names and some of your semi names are getting hit. All your Mag 7s are up. Amazon, this was at 235 last week, so this one nice rebound, 247. Meta almost 590. Microsoft almost 400. Apple almost 300. SpaceX at 170. Tesla at 413. D-Wave. The reason I think your quantum names are pumping is because of this headline. Amazon Web Services deepens strategic partnership with quantum computing firm QEra to bring fault-tolerant quantum computing to the Amazon bracket. I think of that headline that came about 20 minutes ago. That is probably why your quantum names are getting some love. IONQ, that's up 9%. Rigetti, that is also up 11%. Uranium is making a pretty big move right there. Uranium ETF, wow, 6%. Well, that makes sense, right? I mean, if this Iran war is over, you would imagine that could potentially be bullish for uranium in general. Where's oil? Are we below 80? We are not below 80 yet. 80.43, down 5.5%. It's trying to get below 80. ELF, that's up 6%. Datadog just went red. Again, not all the semi names are participating. Or sorry, all the software names. Then again, not all the semi names either. Where's Intel? It was hitting 130 last night. Intel back to 130. I think this is 132 is all-time highs. Very, very, very close. Gold and silver, are those up? Gold's up 2%, silver's up 2%. I mean, outside of a few names, inside of a few sectors, pretty much everything's catching a bid. Now, will that bid last at the level that it's catching it at? I don't know. We got to see throughout the day if that can hold on. Even Virgin Galactic's up 1.9%. SanDisk above 2,000. But it is pretty freaking green. Broadcom almost at 400. That's up 2.5%. MicroStrategy, that's up 9% on the day. Wow, AMD. This is pretty incredible, dude. This is incredible. AMD 550. If I knew it was going to 550, I would have bought more at 200. I mean, goodness, dude. This gave us, I think the low was 195. I bought it around 208. Obviously, my NVIDIA bag is heavier than the AMD bag by a lot. But NVIDIA at 160 to 200 is a nice move. AMD at the same time, 200 to 550 is a really nice move. And it's almost like the street's like, look, if we're going to give NVIDIA a $5 trillion market cap, we've got to give AMD at least $1 trillion. And that's what it really feels like. Even if the growth is not the same and, even if the multiple is a bit more aggressive. But it's here. I mean, the idea that this doesn't hit $1 trillion this year feels kind of silly at this point. AMD 550, that's up 7.6%. As this one continues to make a move. Micron as well, not slowing down as memory continues to become more aggressive and more part of the broader ecosystem for AI and context windows. I mean, when you really think about how much AI is going to be running for us over the next 20 years and how much memory will be needed, it's never a question of if the memory is valuable. It's always a question of the supply-demand imbalance that creates the pricing power for these stocks and, how much their momentum has run through. But obviously, it makes sense for institutions right here to still think that even if they miss the memory train, that there is more room to run on it. Dell right there at 400. ARM now flips green at 382. That goes green. Nebius, which should be moving today with CoreWeave, 253. That's up on that Anthropic news. Obviously, they're also getting into the NASDAQ, which is important. Western Digital, that's green. Seagate, that's green. Okay, here's the question for everybody. What's your bear case now? Let's assume the Trump-Iran thing is over, which I know it's a little bit of a large assumption, but let's assume it's over. What is your bear case if you had to come up with a bear case? Fear and greed, by the way, we are at fear still, 36. We were at 24 last week. That fear and greed index tends to work out when you buy when it gets close to extreme fear. Let's assume the Taiwan invasion doesn't happen immediately. I don't know if China's going to do it with Trump in office. I think they're going to wait for a different administration. But I do think that's going to happen eventually. I just hope it doesn't happen anytime soon. And I hope we are more prepared for when it happens. The Taiwanese also believe it's going to happen. But outside of that type of geopolitical event, outside of Iran, dude, if we do anything with Cuba because they don't control 20% of the world's oil exports, I think the market will ignore it. SpaceX below 170 right there. But Cuba could be an issue. FOMC. Well, here's the thing. Now that Warsh has oil on his side, which is to the downside, I think he will be able to make the case for CPI coming down and to not be that worried. Maybe they're not going to cut, but they're definitely, that whole idea of hiking is got to be kind of off the table, right? There was an article by the Wall Street Journal saying that Kevin Warsh, oh, wow. This came out right now, a minute ago. Warsh may not submit the dot plot, which would reflect his views on forward guidance. Yeah, so the entire Wall Street Journal article was about how Warsh wants to stop giving forward guidance, which, I don't disagree with, because the forward guidance is absolute BS, because no one knows what's going to happen, especially not the Fed. So if the Fed doesn't know what's going to happen, why the hell are they telling us, well, this is what we think is going to happen? It's like, you guys don't know. You guys always say you're data dependent, and then you create these false expectations, which ends up messing up the view of market participants, or at least twisting their view in terms of how they think about where the trajectory of rate cuts or rate hikes are going. So it never makes sense. Like, you should just let the data be the data. In fact, you should give a contract to Palantir to really analyze real-time data so you guys can make real-time decisions. But if he wants to be more data dependent, getting rid of that forward guidance makes sense. If he's going to get rid of the dot plot, I kind of don't think that's crazy, because there's no way they can see 3 years into the future. They can barely see 3 months into the future. But what will the other Fed participants say if that's how Kevin Warsh wants to manage the Fed? I think that's going to be, a very big question going into that FOMC meeting. But to your point, yes, FOMC could be a risk if there's something that people get caught off guard with in terms of how Warsh is thinking about interest rates. 209.70 on NVIDIA. That one's down a little bit from the highs, but still green on the day. T1 Energy, this was $12 a couple weeks ago. Now it's at $8.95, so obviously it's taken a big hit, but it is up 5% on the day. Apple, $2.95, that's green. SoFi back below 17. The problem with SoFi, once again, is until the cuts are guaranteed, and this is kind of what Noto said, I mean, from his perspective, every portfolio manager can't justify buying it. Makes me think every time SoFi gets a run, like to 17, 18, that's all retail, just buying it up. Because you need like real hard money to buy it and hold it, right? That might be the difference. Even Hood, again, Hood has different tailwinds, but Hood losing 100 right here, you're going to need to see some of those tailwinds get even more serious for it to break through. Again, I think the earnings for Q2 on Hood are going to be really good. But then in Q3, if some of that World Cup volatility dies out, like it's still the nature of how can they sustainably grow. They have really tough comps from last year, and obviously Q1 was bad. They only grew 15%, which was not enough for the street to get excited. That's why they took a hit. But the market's expecting that the earnings growth is going to be much stronger. SoFi's earnings growth is much stronger, but that tangible book multiple is what the street, in the words of Noto, seems to be judging them on a little bit more. Reddit 171, that continues to be green. Is anyone buying SpaceX? SpaceX 170. Anyone taking a shot right here at all? 170.3. I still, I thought about it more over the weekend. I still cannot make sense of the valuation at all. As much as I love the company, as much as I think Ron Barron is right about the potential of it, I can't stomach it at this price, dude. I just can't. I think there's a lot of better opportunities. But nonetheless, the idea that it could hold this valuation also doesn't seem like it's impossible. Qualcomm, that's up 6%. That's green. Meta 590. That's up 4%. It would be very nice for Meta to be worth as much as SpaceX, because they kind of do 30 times more operating income. If we learned anything about fundamental valuation in the stock market, it would be nice for Meta to be worth at least $2 trillion. If SpaceX is going to get 2.3, that would be fun. AMD, are we breaking 552? Yeah, we did. 553.39, folks. This thing is just hitting all-time highs every minute at this point. 900 billion is your market cap on AMD. 900 billion dollars. That is true. OnlyFans has more operating income than SpaceX. That is correct. That is correct. Grab getting a nice day right here, up 8%. I think the major reason for this, again, is that as oil comes down, part of the reason Grab, I bet you Melli and Nubank are also up. Melli is up. That is correct. And Nubank, that is also up. Yeah, all the international names have been hit hard by this oil crisis. And it's been really annoying, but I mean, you kind of can't even blame those companies, right? Like if Iran and the US tried to get into a war, many of these companies are developing nations, and they need cheap oil, and they've been getting much more expensive oil. So that should be a broader tailwind to help the international names, I would think, and have the street focus more on their fundamentals, where Mercado, Grab, Nubank, I mean, these fundamentals on these companies are unbelievable. Then again, liquidity in the Microns and the AMDs and the SpaceXs of the world makes it a little bit tough, I think, for people to get excited about those names. So oil coming down, good for them. Broader narrative, has it shifted? I don't really think so. Same thing with the software names. Broader narrative hasn't really shifted yet. The liquidity still is in the CapEx AI build-out names, which, are growing the fastest and getting the most love. AMD 555, 905 billion, as that continues to go up. As that continues to make a move. That is also true. You're right. SpaceX insiders, they don't have the ability to sell yet. It's going to take them some time. So a lot of that lockup period has not been resolved. Wow, 50 million shares in 15 minutes on SpaceX. Goodness, bro. Goodness. Okay, so what else is the bear case? Besides Kevin Warsh, what else do we think we need to be for the next 5 days? Not 5 days, 5 months. I mean, one bear case I didn't hear people mention is general midterm correction volatility. This has been the only year so far where we haven't had a disgusting pullback. The Iran war was 8.9%, right? I don't think it qualified, and it was pretty quick. It was a couple weeks. Like, we haven't had a really prolonged downturn like 2018, 2022 for a midterm year yet. We still have 7 months left of the year, but I wonder, does that happen? Jobs, labor market. Yeah, I think labor market definitely could happen. I mean, you could see it potentially having an issue. But once again, like, none of the data is showing that the labor market is bad. S&P, wow, 750, 330. You've got some really nice green momentum right here to get the SPY moving here. To get it seriously moving. I'm missing the market open. Okay, so for those that don't know, again, June 24th, I'm going to Singapore. I'll be back July 6th. In that time, I will probably miss around 4 days collectively. I'll probably be able to make 3 market opens. I will not have a market close during that entire 2 weeks, which is, I mean, you don't have a lot of earnings, so those 2 weeks aren't that crazy. I am missing Micron earnings, but it'll be the first vacation I've had in 5 years. But we'll still have about 3 to 4 market opens during that time. And hopefully markets can be rather normal. Tesla 413, Reddit 169. Credo's getting hit, dude. This one's been getting hit every other day. And then it randomly gets back up 264 to 244. But it still got hit. I am missing June's birthday, unfortunately. Your PTO request is denied. I am actually looking forward to it, to be honest. Like, I am legit looking forward to having a vacation. I'm probably still going to be tweeting like crazy. I just, might not be streaming that much. But it'd be nice to just get away for a little bit and actually spend some time with family and relax. Because India, when I went to India back in October of 2024, it wasn't really a vacation because, like, there's so many events, and so it's not like you're actually relaxing. This time we're actually at a resort. Might be able to drink some Mai Tais. What's in a Mai Tai, by the way? I always hear people say drinking a Mai Tai on the beach. Is that like iced tea and vodka or something? What is in a Mai Tai? Wow, AMD 557 as that continues to make a move. Can you actually unplug from the market? Probably not. But given the time difference, I literally won't be able to stream. So I think that'll force me to unplug at least a little bit. It's fruity rum. Okay, I look forward to drinking some Mai Tais. Fruity rum. Dell 412, that reversed. Dude, this market is like, this has got to be crazy if you're like net bearish. Like, I think Michael Burry right now has to be like pulling out his hair, looking at this shit every time he gets a little close. Every time. And he got a little close last week, right? We had 3 red days. 3 ugly red days. I mean, down almost 2% on each of those days. We had 1 day where we recovered, so that's why it wasn't a net 6% down. But still, every time the orange man in the White House comes out and says, oh, I have all the power in the world to make these numbers go up. Guess what? Tweet, I'm going to make these numbers go up. And then he brags about it. As soon as he tweeted that he's not going to be bombing Karg Island, an hour later in the press conference when he was signing the executive order, he was like, yeah, well, stock market's up 1,000 points. It's like, it's all rigged to go higher. It's all rigged to go higher. And you've just got to be able to deal with the volatility in the short term for when it's not going higher. Now, I don't want to be naive. 2008 obviously was bad. COVID was bad. Like, these things happen, right? We've had depressions before, recessions, not saying, but like, as I'm being facetious about this idea of Trump manipulating the market, what he can't manipulate is the earnings. And the earnings have been just unbelievable across the board, which, gives you the reason for why these stocks get to hold on to their move. Having said that, some of these valuations are up there, and I don't think you have to YOLO on the stocks that have gone absolutely crazy, but it also doesn't mean you have to. Here's the thing. You don't have to YOLO AMD at 557. But you definitely don't have to feel the pressure to sell it if you got in at 200, 300, 70. And that's the thing. It's like you might not have that many buyers coming in because they're a little afraid, but you also have all the seller or all the holders thinking, well, I'm not going to sell it. And so it forces price action to find a new level that buyers are willing to come through. And maybe that's at 500, maybe that's at 550, maybe that's at 480. Last week it was at 430, but it's definitely not back at 200 because you just need a lot more net selling, and you're not seeing that right now. SpaceX 173.50. 173.50 as that continues to go up. I thank you for the super chat. 200 shares of AMD at 120. Unfortunately, sold a $500 call for December 2028. What do you think we should do with these shares? Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, when you bought those shares at 120 and sold the $500 call almost 2 years out at this point, you told yourself at the time you think AMD will not be able to get to 500 by December 2028. You ended up being wrong, right? So you just have to remember that if that's the agreement you had with yourself back then, the market proved you wrong, which is not something to be upset about. It happens literally every day to millions of people that participate in the market. And so you have to ask yourself now, do you take the loss and buy back those shares if you think AMD is going to be much higher than 500 by then? Or are you okay with letting those shares go away in December of 2028? And I think, it's the general thing I've been hearing more about option selling as a investor. I think there's a lot more nuanced views on option selling over the past couple of years, given how bullish this market has been. Like, legitimately, I've come to the conclusion that option selling for income only works if the stock legitimately is stuck in a range. And I hate to pick on SoFi right here, but SoFi is the perfect example of it, right? When the stock can't get out of a range, or if it gets a breakout, but then it falls right back down, that is when you sell calls and puts because you likely never get assigned. When you have a stock like Robinhood or a stock like AMD or a stock like Meta, where you're like, Meta can't go below 620 and then it drops to 550, like the volatility, or Nebius, right? The volatility that creates the premiums. The problem is the ability to get those premiums means that you have to deal with insane levels of upwards or downwards movement. And you can say, oh, well, even if my shares get called away at 250 for Nebius and it goes to 400 one day, I don't care because I still made money. You could say that, but then practically the feeling is that you missed out on $150 worth of gains, right? And so I think from that perspective, a lot of the option selling in a bull market or even in a bear market has to be contingent based on, realistically, are you okay with letting shares get sold away or being assigned shares at a cheaper price? And then unfortunately, yes, the premium on SoFi, which is range bound, isn't that good because obviously it's range bound. So you don't get, massive volatility there. So I don't know. It's one of those things where I think option selling can be effective for income, but I think more realistically, option selling is important for when you want to exit a position and you are totally fine with selling your AMD at 550. Like you really don't care. And you're like, look, I made enough gains. I'm happy for it to be taken away. If it goes higher, it goes higher. If not, then you're happy to get assigned AMD at like 200, right? So you sold puts at 200, you would have no problem getting those shares. But if you're doing it reliably every week for income, the problem is the volatility of these names in a bull or bear market can just wreck your thesis so many times, right? And I think we've seen that more and more happen over the past couple of years. Rocklab 108.76 as that continues to go green. ELF holding up today as well. When does NVIDIA break out? Your guess is as good as mine. The big news on NVIDIA again this morning was that they're issuing $20 billion of debt. I would imagine they're funding some data center build-outs with some other companies that they're partnering with. That would have to be the reason for it because they have enough cash. But I don't think the street liked that news once they heard it, which I get. They have so much cash. I think Wall Street's probably like, why the hell do you guys need to lever up? But they probably need more. So, look, AMD won this year. It's just that simple. You got to give it up for people who picked AMD over NVIDIA this year. Like, it made more sense, and the CPU revolution with agentic. I mean, numbers-wise, it would have been hard to make the argument outside of looking at the one number that apparently mattered all year, which was the freaking market cap, not the PE, not the growth rate, not the operating margins, not the gross margins, not the EPS figure in 2028. Which NVIDIA is growing substantially higher than pretty much every other semiconductor company, which would warrant the justification. It was the market cap. Which name actually had the ability to add market cap? It was AMD. That's it. It was AMD over NVIDIA. And anyone who's super bullish NVIDIA, like myself, has to be able to acknowledge that. Like, when the stock doubles in 2 months, and Nvidia can barely go up, 15%, you lost. Like, it's just that simple. AMD was the better buy this year. Now, maybe Nvidia can, but even if Nvidia goes to 250 by the end of the year, which is asking for a lot, in my opinion, AMD was still going to be the better buy. And if Nvidia's at 250, we know AMD is probably at 600. So, AMD was the better buy. It was just that simple. It ended up working out in an easier fashion. Reddit right there, 171. As that continues to hold green. SpaceX, underwriters fully exercised IPO over allotment option. Underwriters exercise option to buy ADDL 83 million shares. SpaceX raises about $85 billion in the IPO. Wow. Their target was $75 billion. They ended up raising $85 billion. My goodness, dude. All that conversation of where's liquidity going to come from? We have a market that's basically at all-time highs, and SpaceX found a way to find $85 billion. Maybe the bear case on Anthropic and OpenAI going public is going to be the exact same thing. You're going to have some macro event happen, like the Iran war ending on Sunday, or technically on Thursday before the IPO. Gives you a great macro backdrop for a lot of money to flood into the markets. You got $8 trillion on the sidelines. And you have a president who does not want to see the markets go down. I mean, it feels like that's enough to keep this train moving up. I mean, you're right about NVIDIA and AMD, but if I've been holding NVIDIA for over 6 years, AMD for over a year, both are winners. Yeah, like so if you've held NVIDIA since 2019, 2020, you've obviously done way better than AMD. But I'm more so talking about during the March sell-off, what was the better buy? And I bought some AMD. I bought a little bit of Broadcom at 292, but my biggest buy was NVIDIA by far. And that ended up not being the right buy if we're talking about pure price performance. I mean, it's just, you can't even debate it, right? It was safer in my opinion. I didn't see the agentic CPU thing. Even if you think agentic CPUs is a tailwind for AMD, NVIDIA is going to do the most amount of revenue from selling CPUs with Vera, more than AMD and ARM. So it's like, even that tailwind should be, that's why I think Jensen's been so pissed off this year. And he keeps talking about the stock because he's like, guys, like everything you guys want, I'm giving to you. Everything. I'm accelerating revenue at a 5 trillion market cap. What more do you want? And I think the street's just like, yeah, but you guys are kind of boring now, as crazy as that is to say. And that's why AMD ended up, taking off the way that it did. Broadcom 391, little red right there from that higher level. Quick question, the stock draft, why can't you be allowed to pick the same stocks? The problem is then we would have the same portfolios, and then it's not fun, right? That's the whole point of the stock draft. Realistically, yeah, you could pick the same stocks, but it's more fun if I take NVIDIA and Tanner has to pick something else or whatever. Because then if we both have NVIDIA, we both have the same performance with NVIDIA. So it kind of doesn't make it fun in terms of an actual stock draft. Mercado Libre, that's up 3%. Nebby is still holding 250. Why is Nokia going down? Good question. This thing was pushing 15 last night, 1452. Not sure. You're seeing a bunch of different semi names like Credo, Nokia, ARM take a little bit of a haircut here. But they were green. Are you following the Clarity Act? I think we're not going to get a full Senate confirmation on the Clarity Act until mid-July, if I'm not wrong, right? I know it passed the House Financial Services Committee, but it needs to pass the Senate at this point. And that's still going to take a couple months, if I'm not wrong. But if Bitcoin comes back to this bull market, then we're talking. Then we've got a lot of excitement. Again, I'm trying to think bearish. What is the bear case? What is the way this all falls apart in the summer? I know we all feel euphoric and happy today, but what is the way that this thing doesn't play out? To valuations, does Nebius have to go to 350 to top out? Does Hood have to go back to 150 or something? What has to happen? I hope we don't have tariffs again. That would not be fun. Any details for the meetup in Singapore? I will put the link right here in the chat. Again, it is in literally less than 2 weeks right now. Very excited for it. All the details will be on this website, the location, all that stuff. I think Jess is sending out an email to people today if you've already signed up. It's a $100 ticket. We don't make any profit off of it. All of this goes back into paying for the location. But it's a really nice rooftop bar in Singapore. Very great location. We have food, drinks, all that stuff. So it should be a fun time. This is my first time going to Southeast Asia, so I'm excited for it. Again, I have an uncle who lives in Singapore. He's been there for a long time, so it'll be fun to explore. And yeah, it'll be a fun time. Should be cool. I'm also interested just to see like the culture there. You know, it's so clean and this, and people barely own cars. Like I'm really interested to see just like how the society operates there. MicroStrategy, that's up 5. Nike, that's up a little bit as well. I will probably take a grab when I am there. Well, most likely, I will call up a grab. But I am excited to kind of just see. You know, I haven't been out of the United States in a while. Like, yeah, I don't think I've done an international trip outside of India. Like, I haven't been out of the U.S. in a long time. So should be excited. Bank of Japan rate decision. We already know they're going to raise rates, though, by 25 bips. So I don't even think that's going to be, that's factored in my opinion. Kiel's up 5%. So I think it'll be okay. I think the Bank of Japan is not going to have a major impact here. It's kind of crazy, bro. I hate to say this, but we're kind of in Goldilocks. Like, oil down, rate expectations probably going to be neutral instead of a hike like it was last week. Labor market's doing better than ever if you believe the data. AI productivity, crazy. Earnings growth, amazing. I mean, outside of software and fintech lagging, which hopefully in a bull market those would catch up, CapEx continues to be spread. I mean, the fact that Google could dilute by 85 billion and no one really cared. You just have a lot of things going in the right direction, I feel like. Which is why I think we need to be more cautious over, what could be wrong. Oh, by the way, guys, I will not be going to Tanner's meetup, unfortunately. I called him over the weekend and told him I have my mom's sister and her husband, so basically my aunt and uncle, are coming to America in mid-August, literally at the same time of his meetup. So her sister's been here before, but her husband's never been here, so my uncle. So yeah, I will not be able to do Toronto. I'll have to be spending some time with them. My mom literally told me Friday night. I was like, oh, well, can't do Canada. But hopefully we'll be back in Toronto eventually. That is true. I did leave the country for the Toronto meetup. I don't count Canada as like really leaving the United States. It was like an hour flight. I felt like they were kind of the same, but that is true. I did leave the country back then. But I think Steve's still going. I think Matt's still going. So still should be a fun time. Tokenomics is the bear case. It's a bubble. Well, we talked about that a lot last week. I think if the token costs go down, the volume of tokens just goes up. I mean, like, that's a simple way. Wow, Q 740. Is that an all-time high? Did we hit 750 before? No, 748. We hit 748 today. Okay, so we are basically at all-time highs today. Yeah, I think if token costs go down, then everything in the neoclouds, in the wafers and the servers, all of the demand for that should theoretically go up. It might hurt Anthropic and OpenAI, but if their volume increases, it might not even affect them as aggressively as we think. So I kind of think token costs going down is net bullish. It should be super bullish for the software companies because they can easily process the tokens through their software at a much easier cost for their clients. I mean, like, it should be net bullish for everyone except the model companies in the short term. But I don't even know if that's like a massive bear case. Salesforce right there, that's up a little bit, 1.5%. As that continues to go green as well. I worked in Singapore for 7 years before transferring to for Hong Kong. It's too hot. It's almost on the equator, so there are practically no seasons, no winter in Singapore. Yeah, it's definitely going to be hot. I wonder if it's as hot as Miami in August, though, because Miami in August was a different feeling last year. It was a different level of humidity. Palantir 131.74 as that continues to go green. Okay, what else? What other macro stuff do we have? We got the housing market index. That just came out, 35. The street wanted 37. That's worse than expected. But I don't know if the market cares that much about it. Trump is in Europe even know that. Trump is attending the G7 summit today in Europe. There's some coverage on that. It looks like they'll be discussing Iran at that summit as well.
That this deal will lead to more progress. We're down to $80 a barrel on WTI. And guys, that's good news for Kevin Warsh, who has his first meeting as Fed chair this week. We will hear from him on Wednesday. I think the market is telling you that the fact that there's a deal on the table here decreases the odds that he has to be super hawkish, talking about higher interest rates. You're seeing buying of bonds right now. That's really been the story over the last few weeks. We interestingly got some comments already from the European Central Bank President, Christine Lagarde. She was in a radio interview today, and she was talking about oil prices, and she welcomed the deal. But also, here's how she thinks about it as a central banker. She said, indirect effects of inflation, we have absolutely started to see that more or less everywhere in recent weeks. When we start to feel second round of effects bubble up, which are risks of wage increases in particularly, we necessarily have to take measures, talking about future interest rate hikes there. If this news is confirmed, she talked about the Iran deal, by developments in the coming days and the signature of a memorandum of understanding, it's good news. We can only welcome it, above all, if it means reopening and demining the Strait of Hormuz. Remember, guys, Europe actually raised interest rates last week for the first time since 2023. They have a single mandate, which is just inflation. Warsh has a double mandate, which is to keep, yes, inflation in check, but also keep a strong jobs market. And, you know, so far, economy's held up relatively well, but we are seeing inflation bubble up. And I guess the question is how he's going to deal with that.
It's true. Now, the last week.
Interesting that Europe only has an inflation mandate. I wonder what's the logic behind that. Because you would think, given how advanced it's become, they would also have a labor market mandate, which is why, you know, because if you raise rates, it's harder to hire people, which is why the U.S., in the face of the worst inflation we've had since 2023, has not raised rates yet, because they have that mandate around the labor market, right? So Europe ended up doing it, I guess, based on a way of just combating inflation. SpaceX still 173, as that's holding on. Dude, SpaceX, 2.26 trillion, 120 times sales is what you've got on Mr. SpaceX here. 70 million shares traded in the first 39 minutes on SpaceX. My God. Dude, for comparison, Google, 5 million. Broadcom, 5 million shares. NVIDIA, 28 million. SpaceX has 3x more than NVIDIA in terms of volume. Micron, 11 million. I mean, SpaceX is the new chick at the bar, and everyone wants to sit with her. I would imagine, and the options market opens for SpaceX on Tuesday, I would imagine that's going to be top 5 every day in the options market. Like, that itself might keep it at this level. If you just have tons and tons of people using it as a way to grab premium or sell premium. 172.77 on Mr. SpaceX. What else do we see? SpaceX is up, Broadcom's up, NVIDIA's kind of up. Trump again in Switzerland for the dude. I really didn't know there was a G7 summit happening today. Okay, so that's in Switzerland. So maybe his people are going to stay there until Friday for the signing, which is also going to be happening in Switzerland. Has anyone been to Switzerland? Does anyone live there? My mom went there a couple of years ago with my sister. They were there for a couple of weeks. There's a very famous Indian movie that was filmed in Switzerland. It was called, let me see if I can get the name of this thing. It was called DDLJ. DDLJ. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Indian version of it because I can't speak it. But that was filmed in Switzerland. So that's how I've always seen it. I got a couple people. Magusa said I lived there for 6 years. Switzerland, I heard, is really hot, from my understanding. And like they don't have air conditioning easily accessible as well, is what I've heard. AMD is still pushing 552. That's green. It was not Slumdog Millionaire. Dude, that's barely even an Indian movie. Like that was the only Indian movie that Americans like saw in the mainstream. But like that doesn't even rank in the top 50 of like big Indian movies, at least from Bollywood. But DDLJ is my favorite Indian movie. Yeah, they went there in July, and from what my mom told me, she was like, there was not an AC anywhere. Obviously, in the winter it's colder, but like their hotel didn't even have an AC. I was like, what? How does your hotel not have an AC? It was like so weird. NVIDIA 209, Broadcom 391. There's no AC in the UK either. Yeah, I don't know. They were just like, it was super humid, hot, like uncomfortable. But they did say it was beautiful, especially when you look at the scenery. ARM making a little comeback right there, 382. Not seeing too many crazy headlines. We don't have a lot of macro stuff. S&P just below 753, as that's holding on. And so that's been okay. Why is Viavi selling off? Not sure. This has been a massive run, though, in the data center space. Same with Amcor, probably just catching its breath. It's up like 200% for the year. NVIDIA still at 209. As that is also flat. Oh, yeah. The UK officially banned 16-year-olds from social media. So that is now a thing. See, I don't know if the US could get away with doing something like that, but just because of, you know, the nature of like liberalism here, but it's officially live in the UK, which is kind of bearish for some of the media companies, but it seems like it might be more bullish for mental health of kids.
Every parent wants the best for their kids. And that's what being a parent means. And for me, for my two kids, all I've ever wanted, hand on heart, is for them to be safe and for them to be happy. And the rest is up to them. But, you know, I think back to when I was growing up, and I have to say, I think we had it easier. These days, kids have to find their feet in a world that changes so quickly, where technology intrudes into every area of their lives. And we know that harms them. The response from parents in the consultation has been absolutely clear. Thousands of parents say their children are addicted to social media. It can leave them trapped in a cycle of endless scrolling that displaces play, sleep, and time with the family. It can harm their mental health. And frankly, parents need our support on this. That is why today, the government has decided to ban social media access for children under 16. It's a big step for our country. Now, it's not an easy thing to do. I'll be honest about that. We haven't rushed into it. We've looked carefully at the evidence. And we'll have to adapt our approach as technology changes.
Now, I wonder how they're going to do it, because the enforcement of that is not going to be the easiest. By the way, as Gemini, to confirm this, and this is basically when my mom went to Switzerland, so it can surpass 30 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So I think they went in mid-July in 2022, and you know that's why it ended up being hot. But it is the hottest month of Switzerland throughout the 12-month cycle. But in terms of this ban, it's like, okay, so is Facebook going to be responsible for saying, hey, is the kid 15 or 16? And then what if the kid just lies? Like literally, what if the kid was like, I was born in 1990? You know, like, isn't that the easiest way to, or like, is there something more sophisticated? Because I really do wonder how you implement something like that. Like, there's no technological way they can do it outside of the social media companies themselves asking for your age. And if you lie about it, you know, what are they supposed to do? Unless they would need you to like put out their ID or something. I mean, maybe that's a way to push back against it. So you're gonna have to like show your passport or your government issued ID, which, you know, social media, the tech companies haven't really chosen to do as part of the sign-up process, because that's how they push back against it. Yeah, well, digital ID, you know, this is very similar to what China has done with social capital. I mean, in China, there's a limit on how long you can play video games. I mean, a lot of this stuff has been dictated. And there's different perspectives. Some people say it's a dictatorship, it's unfair. A lot of other people say, well, this is why Chinese kids are so smart, because they're not scrolling on TikTok looking at nonsense. And so definitely different perspectives. But I wonder if it's going to actually affect Meta, Google, in any meaningful way. Meta right there, 590, as that continues to go green. What do you think about the UFC fight? Dude, the UFC fight looked epic last night. Not going to lie, it looked epic. I didn't get to watch the whole thing. Here was Zucks and his dad. There were a lot of people there last night. Zucks has become a big fan of the UFC. Dana White, obviously on the board of Meta. But it looked pretty freaking epic. Like, having the White House in the background was just like, I was curious, like, what it actually would look like, and it looked pretty crazy. So if you're a UFC fan, you probably really enjoyed it. But yeah, I mean, for America 250, it definitely looked pretty freaking cool. It was epic, right? Like I saw like 10 minutes of it at the very end, but I was just like, man, like the entrances, I saw Sean O'Malley enter it, and I was like, this is a dope set. SpaceX officially offered 638 million shares of their Class A common stock. Okay, so that was the offering, 638 million shares, and they raised $85 billion. Yeah, you had Medal of Honor recipients walking out with the fighters. I mean, they definitely made it an event, a pretty big event. Robin Hoodie, are we back to 100? We are trying to get there. Nebius, a little bit of red right there, still up 6.7%. I'm surprised the Nebius, the CoreWeaves, the Rocket Labs aren't running more based on the NASDAQ inclusion. I mean, there will be a lot of forced buying on these stocks in the next 20 days. And they are relatively tame from when it was announced. UNH, that flips green, 407. Cerebrus just flipped red as well. Broadcom, wow. Someone just paid $21 million of premium for the Broadcom 420 call, December 17th, 2027. It's not at the money, but it's not super out of the money either. You're getting some Broadcom buyers here. All right. So, I mean, on a day like this, the fact that I'm searching for the bear case means that we've got a lot of things that have been resolved so far just from how the market's perceiving it. Obviously, we have to figure out if this deal actually legit will get signed. Even if it doesn't get signed, though, the idea that we go back to naval blockades, Strait of Hormuz closed, like, I just think we are so past that. Maybe I'm wrong. But if we are, then maybe we don't have to worry as much. Let's get a little bit more coverage of Trump getting into Switzerland here.
Some strong opinions about how the institution needs to change, and if the institution needs to change towards less communication, less forward guidance, this is a good first opportunity to step up and say there's a lot of uncertainty, including with the Iran deal. So let's now take one step at a time and wait for the incoming data, and that will be our guidepost. So there is a good chance that he could basically bring that to the table.
Here's the president stepping off Air Force One. He's landed in Geneva en route to the G7 meeting. Took off at 3 in the morning after the UFC fight at the White House ended just a little after 1:20 in the morning. So hopefully the president got some rest as he prepares to meet with European leaders with a deal with Iran in hand and a signing ceremony scheduled for Friday on that front. We'll see what the leaders ultimately say. I guess, Torsten, the question is, how lasting is the inflationary impact? Right? If we are seeing prices come down off the worst levels and that's going to help the consumer, is it also going to bring the inflation prices down overall?
Absolutely. And I think this is, of course, we have to be very careful, but this is indeed something that's beginning to look more temporary or transitory. We will have that the inflationary impulse coming from oil prices. It looks like this was indeed a temporary impact. The other challenge now is that when oil prices come down, people drive more in their cars. Of course, people fly now more on airplanes. So that means that demand and the broader economy, which is already strong, will now also, of course, get some tailwinds to inflation.
If it was really transitory, the idea that rate cuts are on the table by the end of the year is not crazy. And if we get rate cuts in this type of market, not saying we're going to get it, we're definitely not going to get a hike, most likely, if oil can continue to go down. But dude, if we actually get more liquidity, Bitcoin, fintechs, I mean, Obviously, high beta growth tech stocks are going to have a cheaper cost of capital. You're just going to see a lot of momentum if Kevin Warsh can get us those cuts, but he needs oil to keep coming down. And, if this war is legit over, we were at 55 in January. We went all the way up to 120. If we could settle in around 70, maybe even 65-ish, that might be your tailwind for cuts.
And combining that with also some tailwinds to inflation coming from tariffs, that means that we are still not out of the woods. I mean, core PCE and core CPI is still around 3%.
But you sound, usually you are a little more perturbed about inflation, and today you sound like you're a little calmer about the outlook.
At least today's development on oil prices is certainly absolutely a welcome
like you're
development.
walking it back a little, actually.
At least when it comes to the energy component, but we still have a very strong economy, and we still have a Fed that has a really hard time cutting rates. Remember, Fed fund futures, as we speak, are still pricing that we'll get a Fed hike in January. So from that perspective, the market is clearly saying that inflation is still not out of the woods.
Yeah, and to our point earlier, talking about producer prices on Supercore, that's not including the war. That's not including energy or trade, right?
Yeah, and you're right, Carl, because if you look also at the 3 and the 6 months change in Supercore, that has started to accelerate even more. So there's a lot of different parts that the Fed and Warsh on Wednesday will have to really, really carefully think about. How much weight do we put on the good developments today that we're getting to the end of the Iran conflict? And how much weight do we put on the fact that the economy is actually quite strong in the background?
Are you impressed at this point from the wealth effect? And is there real liability if markets were to turn for whatever reason?
Well, the significant increase in the stock market, of course, has been driving consumption, especially for high-income households. All the data shows that high-income households continue to still do really, really well. So as long as we still have that tailwind, that will continue to be a very important driver for growth. In particular, the Red Book weekly data for retail spending, still very strong across the board. Really no signs of a slowdown. So that's also telling you the U.S. consumer still is looking quite healthy. And also, if you look at the Bank of America, they also had their card data, also showed especially spending on tourism, on travel, on leisure, continue to be a strong tailwind.
Speaking of Bank of America, man, that $7,100 target's looking like crap right now. I mean, again, they've been the most bearish bank on the sell side this entire year. And last week, they were like begging their clients to sell. That shit didn't work, man. It's kind of crazy. Like, even the average retail investor that doesn't pay that much attention to markets could be like, wait a second, if the war ends and oil comes down, stocks will go up. And then you have Bank of America saying, no, everything's going to shit. It's like you have to sell. We have every red flag that you could imagine popping up. It's like, well, a lot of those red flags, we're not talking about the end of the world. Like they could, you're not talking about the housing crisis in 2008. Like a lot of these things can be reversed. And you have someone who literally likes to have this creative destruction to be able to act like he saved it, AKA Trump. And Bank of America couldn't tell the difference. I mean, it's incredible how some of the sell side thinks of the macro versus how just a general retail investor could be like, no, I'm going to buy the dip. This is a pretty simple piece of logic to walk down towards. But it has been green, and we are well beyond that $7,100 target. I see a lot of you guys commenting about the helicopter in the chat. Yeah, okay. Helicopters are becoming more and more scary because at this point we've had various high-profile deaths. Obviously, Kobe Bryant died in 2020 in the helicopter. Over the weekend in Brazil, there was another helicopter crash, and Oliver Tree, I don't know how many people here know him, but he is a pretty big musician. He ended up dying in the helicopter crash. And there was a few other people that died. And it's like, every time I've thought of, let me do a helicopter tour around New York City, I'm like, you see these headlines and it's like scary. And then on top of that, the other thing that happened in Brazil over the weekend, I could not believe this. This was on video. I'm obviously not going to show the video, but it's out there. There's a place where you can go bungee jumping. And, well, a woman was thrown off like normal in a bungee jump. The problem is they kind of forgot to attach the bungee, and she fell to her death. And as I've gotten older, skydiving, bungee, all this stuff, I'm like, you know what? I kind of just like being in my room and having the AC on and having good Wi-Fi. Like, I applied to go skydiving back in 2018. It's for my 21st birthday. I paid for it. Everything was good to go, but it started raining that day, so they canceled it. And I never ended up going back to skydive. As I get older, man, I'm just like, you know what, that risk appetite, I'd rather buy some like weekly call options on Micron before I jump off and experience the thrill of being attached to a bungee. I'm like, literally, the video, they throw her off without the bungee. I was like, it's bungee jumping. How do you forget to attach the like, you would think that's the number one thing you attach, the bungee, to the bungee jump. And it's unbelievable. It's unfair. And then you got all this helicopter stuff happening. And that Oliver Tree, I mean, he's not like the biggest musician in the world, but he's had some pretty big hits, like billions of streams. And at 32, for him to pass, like, it's crazy. So I don't know, my appetite to like take risks with my life, that shit is, it's gone. Like, it is completely gone. Yeah, the spot was bad as well. Yeah, like when I go to Bali, I don't want to go bungee jumping. I'm good, bro. I'm okay. It's a developing country. Maybe the bungees aren't that developed. I'm all right. Palantir 131, trying to get up 3%. Oh, Nadella tweeted over the weekend something that got a lot of people thinking. A frontier without an ecosystem is not stable. It's a really good article. And he basically made the argument that all this AI shit doesn't matter unless you have contextual operating systems that allows AI to become real. He also made the case for the token factories. And it's actually like, this article is super bullish Palantir, super bullish Nebius. Because he was talking about distributed compute, how we contextualize compute, how we have to have operational context to be able to make the AI models valuable. Like, he's kind of taking a shot at OpenAI throughout the entire article and bigging up a lot of these other players that are trying to actually make AI more valuable outside of the model layer. Even Elon commented on it and he thought it was a great article. So it's one of those things where, again, even if some of these stocks aren't moving like crazy, like the hardware names, they are playing an incredibly valuable role in AI. And eventually the market, hopefully will recognize that. A family died on a helicopter in New York. Wow. Yesterday? Goodness gracious. I know there was one 2 months ago. That actually made a lot of headlines. Yeah, dude, it's not exciting anymore to take that crazy risk. Like, when I was in my very early 20s, I really wanted to do all that stuff. And again, it's like the odds of actually dying in a skydive or stuff, you have better odds of dying in a car crash, right? It's just, if it were to happen, it would be like, did you really have to go travel, commute to work? It's like, yes, that's my job. I had to get in the car. I had to go to work. Unfortunately, got into an accident. You can't really avoid that. Did you really have to skydive? It's like, no, you didn't have to do that. You didn't really need to do it. So if it were to happen, it begs the question of was that super important? Microsoft, almost 400. At least this one's making another move as well. Yeah, the one over the Hudson, that's exactly the one I was talking about a couple of months ago. I don't know, man. It's scarier and scarier. You can survive a car accident. You can't survive a no parachute jump. That is also fair. If the parachute doesn't open, it's hard to survive that. Redwire, that one goes red on the day. My craziest thing was I rode a camel in Egypt. I was on an elephant in India back in October last year. But that's it. The girl that died in Brazil had posted right before the jump a picture of her asking who convinced me to do this. That's crazy, bro. That's Intel, by the way, losing 130 right there, but still green. Yeah, when I saw that yesterday, dude, it was just like, I don't get it. How do you forget to attach the bungee? That's the one thing I would check 20 times before I jump. But nonetheless, it's a crazy, crazy world, man. You got to take every day and live it to the fullest. You just never know when shit could happen like that. Zeta getting hit today, Nokia getting hit. All right, so you're getting two of these names that are selling off. SpaceX also selling off from 175. Could not break through 176 again. Got stuck right there. And then Hoodie back to 100. I don't know, guys. I think those insider buys, prediction markets, I think there's enough tailwinds to maybe keep it afloat. I don't know if we get back to 150, but we start pushing 105, 110. The problem again is, can we really beat the earnings growth from last year? You know, last year we're gonna have to break like 1.2 billion in revenue this quarter, which we're on track to match. I don't know if we're on track to beat it. That's the issue. So it's like a lot of this is being priced in, but you know, on the earnings, can we actually get through those levels? Or does Hood have something planned up their sleeve? I mean, again, those insider buys, it makes me think that obviously the guy who's buying 50 million of Hood knows something's going to happen for this to potentially re-rate the entire company. Maybe it's an acquisition. Maybe it's like, maybe there's just something out there that they're planning to do. And that could change it, even if the earnings growth is not that great. DRAM, that's up. Yep. And that would do. DRAM fell like 20% last week. Recovered all of that. As that continues to go green. What about roller coasters? Yeah, I mean, like roller coasters, I feel like are safer. We see less scenarios of roller coasters going bad. I haven't been on a roller coaster in a long time, though. I mean, last time was like 2011. So it's been a minute. But I don't know. Just like a lot of these things, you got to have an appetite to take the risk for it. Okay, NVIDIA trying to get back to 210. Can we break through? We got 2 cents right here. NVIDIA literally teasing us at 209.90. 210 would get it back to the pre-market levels, which would be nice. AMD rejected at 557, but still at 550. Nokia, I don't know why Nokia's down. I have no idea. I mean, some of these semi-names like Cerebras, Nokia, just like losing their steam right there. Marvell, that's holding up. Marvell, again, 330 down to 244, back to 293. So that's made your move. Oracle up to 193. That was at 179 last week. Oracle getting a rebound. Shopify was at 105, now at 112. Not massive, massive moves. Definitely not on the software names. Adobe, ServiceNow, still, they're moves, but they're not crazy moves. But at least they're not going red. I guess the real bear case for the broader markets is if we have a blow off top, and that blow off top leads to a few months of consolidation to the downside, which I think people thought we were going to have last week because, you know, we hit basically 760 and then we started falling to all the way down to 727. And you had that jobs report that kind of was the catalyst. But, you know, blow off top to me is the valuations get so aggressive that everyone acknowledges, okay, this is kind of like getting ridiculous. The problem with, or like the issue with that happening is the valuations don't get that ridiculous every time these stocks go up because the earnings projections are going up. So if Q2, the earnings for AMD crush, you know, like, and we already know NVIDIA is going to crush NVIDIA back to 210. We already know Palantir is going to crush. We know Nebius is going to crush. You know, like, does that need to warrant some massive blow off the top if you have the earnings coming into play? Micron, we absolutely know is going to demolish very soon. So maybe that doesn't have to get hit. HIMS, is this at 30? Dude, this has been toying with 30 for 3 months at this point. Every time it just like stops at 30. It's almost like 30 is that psychological level that this thing won't be able to break through. But it is trying. Intel right there. 128. Are people happy about the war being over? Are people like, I know the market's up today, but are people at least like, okay, cool, we're finally done, we don't have to worry about this? Or does everyone just not just not believe that it's happening? Nothing would make me happier than us not having to talk about this thing anymore. Like, it'd be really nice. Yes, yes, yes. No, I wanted to buy the dip. Well, there were definitely a few weeks of those dips. Here's some coverage of the Fox Roku acquisition, which is happening.
Two streaming services. Take a look at its percentage of overall viewing there at 44%. They have a lot of ad inventory they can sell. Now they can combine it with the news and sports offerings from Fox, and conceivably that will add a good amount of overall value. But again, I would come back to that first day performance. Now, you do have some ARB going on here. In other words, there are people who are setting it up and shorting the stock of Fox as well. By the way, deal came together pretty quickly. They did sign a confidentiality agreement back in, I think it was March, but I'm told by people involved that it was really the last few weeks in which the deal truly came together. It does appear that Anthony Wood, who controls Roku through a 55% voting stake, was the driver of saying, hey, it's the time, we're at an inflection point, sort of looking up and saying who conceivably would be a good acquirer. And Sarah, they ended up with Fox. Nobody likes to see that kind of a first day performance.
Got the Redwire CEO on Bloomberg right here.
Where space has now become a critical national security asset. And in some cases, people have said space is an emerging warfighter domain where assets need to be defended. So there's a lot of both government national security money going into space right now, as well as commercial money going into space. And that's creating a lot of value. And the people who have money that they've made, returns that they've made on the SpaceX investments, I think recognize that and will continue to invest.
Peter, just as a CEO, I wonder how you deal with the volatility, because you've had some insane months. I look at in May, your stock was up 200%, like an annualized 1,000%. And then over the last couple of weeks, it's lost 43% of its value. Now you're still obviously up on the year and you're still doing well, but the peaks and troughs are far apart. How do you deal with that as an operator?
Yeah, well, Redwire is really focused on the long term, and that's the kind of investors we want as well. Is we want people who see the long term value of space, and so the ups and down within a quarter or even within a year. I think the idea is that we are looking to create shareholder value over time. So. From an execution perspective, we have a really good strategy and we have a really good plan, and we continue to execute that every day, regardless of the volatility associated with either space stocks or the macro economy writ large.
They definitely have executed dilution on their shares. I mean, they've diluted by over $1 billion over the past couple of weeks. Redwire right there, up a little bit on the day. Stock has made a nice move. It was at, I think, the 20s a few weeks ago. Year to date, it's still up 68%. Was stuck at around $8-9 throughout March and April. But I think most of these space companies have also realized like this is the perfect time to dilute, because even Rocket Lab diluted at 130, raised $3 billion, right? Stock's under 130 now. But it's the perfect time to do it because this is when the hype around the SpaceX thesis is as high as it's ever been. And, you know, that's when they can use that money to then continue their operations. Robinhood still holding 100. It's bouncing back and forth on 100. Gets rejected around 150, then goes to 99, then comes back. If we can get a close over 100 today, would be very, very nice to see. Seagate, that's still up 7% of the day. Micron, up 9%. Palantir getting a little bit of a move. 133, 4% right there. Let's see if we can crack through 135. It's still green. Did you close recovered calls on Hoodemit? Yes. I closed those before the earnings, before the last one. Stock was around 80 at the time. So honestly, if I had left those calls until, call it 2 weeks ago, I would have made another probably 10, 15%. But yeah, they did serve as a relatively strong hedge when the stock was at 120. But see, the thing about Hood is like, look, when I sold the calls, it was at 120, sold it for 100, dropped all the way to 68 at the lows, I think we dropped to. I closed them at 80. I wonder if this thing just moonshots back up to 120. I mean, we know how volatile it is. It dropped from 150 to 70 within a couple months. Now, the bull market is on Hood's side. What's not on their side is unfortunately the earnings growth, because like, again, they have to beat $1 billion every quarter. Like, it's just hard. You know, last year they had to beat 500 million, 300 million. It was really easy for them to beat, which is why the run up made sense logically. Last quarter was bad, guys. I mean, it was a good quarter, but 15% growth at the level they're trading at, you just can't. Like, no one can justify that type of growth. So that's why the stock took an ugly hit. But now the street's expectations are changing because of all the tailwinds we talked about today. It's just got to show up in the numbers. And if it does, and they're buying back stock, you know, then you start to get a really exciting scenario for it to play out. Microsoft 397, Google back to 370. Google, same price when they announced the dilution, 370. They're right back there. They touched 347 for a day. That was below Buffett's price. And now they're back. Now they are back. The green is back. The green is back. What movie is that from again? We talked about this. I'll be back. Oh, Terminator. Right. Sorry. Terminator. I should go watch that. I still have to finish Boiler Room. I didn't even finish watching that yet. What did you think about the Knicks winning? Dude, it was, I talked about it in the beginning of the show, but it was really cool. It was really freaking cool to see them win. It was really freaking cool. Dana White says he'll never do another fight on the White House lawn ever again. I can't afford it. There's no effing way we can do this again. UFC had to make some good money off that, though. It probably cost them a lot with all the security and everything they had to, but I would imagine they made some decent money off of it. I guess we'll find out over the coming months how profitable it was, but culturally, it was a big thing for the UFC's brand. But yeah, again, I said in the beginning of the show, I got emotional when Jalen Brunson was doing the interview talking about how hard it was to win the championship. I think as I've gotten older, two things have happened. Number one, I don't care about jumping off a building anymore with a bungee attached to me. Like, I'm kind of like over that part of my life. Number two, I've become more emotional, like legit, like tears can get triggered if I see someone talking about their journey of success. There's something about seeing someone, go through it and then come out on top, and then them, acknowledge how hard it was to get there, and being a good human being along the way, right? Never taking the cheap way out, just doing it the right way. Like, that shit makes me emotional. Really makes me emotional. It's just so hard to be successful in life. So hard to do something. It's so hard, especially when you have so many people down. It's so freaking hard to build stuff, succeed, put in the work, put in the hours and hours of dedication in the gym when no one's watching, knowing that one day, that's going to matter on the biggest stage in the world. And that's what Jalen Brunson did. And he did it for a city that's been in a drought for 53 years, man. Like, I think that puts him in the conversation of greatest Knick of all time. It is taking estrogen supplements. Oh my gosh. It's so much sweeter when you succeed. Yeah. It's kind of like stocks, right? Like the AMD people have to feel this, right? When Advanced Money Destroyer for almost 2.5 years was the theme. And now look at the stock. You stuck with it. You believed in Lisa Su. You trusted in the vision. Obviously, people have the same feeling with Palantir. People have the same feeling with Hood. People have the same feeling with Rocket Lab. Like, so many of these journeys that people have gone on, especially if you were early in them, it's really hard to stick with it, man. It's tough. It's not easy because there's just so much pain involved in the process. It's not really athletic, but it's still in a way similar. Yeah, Micron for the majority of last year. A lot of these names. I feel like Hood took me on like 3 different journeys since I've held it. Yeah, I think, and this is, I think the reflection for me as an investor over the past year has been October 2025. I probably, and obviously it's easy to say this in hindsight, but I probably should have sold a lot of stocks during that time. It's super easy to say that now that that was like the short-term top. But I was reflecting on it the other day. I was like, dude, in October 2025, I felt like these stocks would never come down again. Right? Like Hood at 150, I was like, that's not coming back down. Palantir at 200, it's like, that's probably not coming back down. You know, it's like you just like, you have this ego of just like, oh, Bitcoin at 120, it's like, that's not going back down to 60. And I think this is what it means to grow and mature as an investor. It's like, and that's what makes investors a little bit more conservative after you've had years of just going through it. Whereas like, yeah, it could go back down, and it could go back down in a way that makes you basically evaporate any level of progress you made on your portfolio over the past couple of years in a couple months when that shit goes down. And it's one of those things where it's like you start to think more deeply about taking profits. You start to think more deeply about hedging. You start to think more deeply about like, what is my risk tolerance? Because none of this is guaranteed. None of it. It's all a game of numbers that are affected by so many different things. The only way to win is to just hold long forever and not even worry about it. But that's not what most people do, right? Most people are actively trying to manage it. And quite frankly, you know, if the management didn't resolve in some level of rotation to the semiconductor names this year, it's been tough to get meaningful high-level returns. But, you know, you kind of gotta just be toughened up, I think, over time to think about where capital allocation should be going. What do you think about Netflix right here? I don't like it. I mean, I like it if you're going to nibble on it. I don't think the growth story is exciting compared to so many other stocks. And it's still kind of more expensive than a lot of the semiconductor names. You know, at 130, it was ridiculous. But at 70, I'm probably a buyer. At 70, I'll probably take a nibble. I don't know if it gives you 70. It's been stuck at 80 for a while. And the fact that it's stuck at 80 for like the past couple of weeks actually is a good thing, because it probably is not willing to go that much lower. Palantir 134. But it kind of reminds me of Nike. It's like, I don't see the growth story. And the multiple is still kind of aggressive compared to all the other stocks that are growing. But yeah, again, back in October 2025, when it felt like all these names wouldn't go down, I think that's what's forced so many people to question everything every time they have a thesis on a stock, because it could go down, which is why it's so much more rewarding when a stock actually does what you think it's going to do. Because it's you just never know where it's going to go or how it could play out. What's your timeline on Keel? I don't have a timeline on Keel. Again, it's a very small speculative position for me. I'm starting to see a lot of people get excited about this name. And like, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not the ringleader to be excited about this name. I think there's a thesis here on getting a data center deal that re-rates the stock, but is it enough for this thing to form like a Nebius, Iren, CoreWeave type of cult? I don't know. I kind of think that's a little exaggerated for some of the analysis I've been seeing on X of people that are so deep into this name. It's like, it used to be a Bitcoin miner. Like, now it's a data center play. And they've not even gotten a major deal yet. Do I think they can get one? Yeah. Do I think Leopold is onto something? Yeah. But is this the next 10 bagger? I don't know, bro. So yeah, to me, this is more so like, hey, if it goes up, it goes up. If it doesn't, it's whatever. I would not full port this. Although, if you think they get a deal and this thing goes to 10, like, yeah, making a heavy position in it will pay off. It's just, again, going back to risk reward, there is some risk that's associated with this. Is not the Nebius CoreWeave type of neocloud that is out there. But if we have so much compute demand, this one with their excess capacity should get a deal. That's why I'm in it. But I've been saying Iren should get a deal too. Like, you know, it's not happening. It hasn't happened for like a year at this point. So it's one of those. If Keel gets a deal before Iren, that's going to be crazy, bro. If Keel gets a deal before I don't want to go into a rant, but I don't get what's happening with Iren. I just don't get it. I don't know how many times they have to tell us we have things in the pipeline, and then Nebius and CoreWeave just come out with another deal. Like, it's just getting kind of annoying, but ultimately, all of them are going to have to get more deals. HIMS, are we making a move up? HIMS still trying to break 30. Not fully there yet. Grab is push. Why is grab push? Again, it's just oil prices are going down. That's part of the reason I think this thing has been stuck all year. It's like, even though it's ironic because oil prices haven't affected their earnings growth. If you looked at Q1 was phenomenal. So oil wasn't an impact. But perceptually, just like how Noto says, perceptually what portfolio manager is going to buy SoFi if they don't think rate cuts are happening, perceptually what portfolio manager is going to buy Grab and Mercado Libre and Nubank if they think oil prices are going to stay high. So once you have that perception go away, I think that the companies get a lot more attractive. But, they've still got a long way to go green on the year. Would you rather own Netflix, Spotify, or Uber? That's a good question. Netflix, Spotify, or Uber? What do people think? Oh, man. Uber's the cheapest out of all of them, if I'm not wrong. It has the most free cash flow. Well, no, I think Netflix might have a little bit more free cash flow. Spotify, though, has started to get some serious bargaining power with the record labels. This is actually an interesting one. See a lot of people saying Uber. I mean, dude, Uber is cheap, like cheap, like 10 times 20 billion free cash flow type of cheap. PE is barely even at 20. I mean, but see, the thing about Uber is it's been stuck. Like if we go to its chart over the past year, it's either been in a downtrend. Well, it's been in a downtrend from October 2025, and then it's been stuck from February between 70 and 72, peaked all the way below at 60 at one point. So this one feels like a breakout, if anything, once it does pop. So I guess maybe I would say Uber. Netflix just feels like there's a growth story issue, which is why they were about to go in debt to buy Warner Brothers. And I'm just not that confident that, I mean, has the content in 2026 even been good on Netflix outside of the live sporting events? What's been the big Squid Games of 2026? Yeah, we could do a poll on it. What's been the big hit for Netflix? I don't think Netflix has had one. What hit has Netflix had this year? I don't think there's been anything, to be honest. Like, so if that's the case, then I think it comes down to Uber and Spotify. Which one would you own for 5 years? The Diddy doc. Okay, that definitely was a big one. The Michael Jackson one I haven't fully watched yet. I thought I would be more excited to watch it, but I haven't. K-pop Demon Hunters. I still don't know what that show's about, dude. I don't know why people get so excited about it. Yeah, the fact that there's not a unanimous comment in the chat, like the fact that we can't say the Squid Games means, I don't know. Like, realistically, to get this thing to rate up, they would need a new tailwind. And that $3 billion breakup fee was not a tailwind. It helped them beat on their earnings, but it wasn't actually a tailwind. Bill Ackman owns a lot of Uber as well. Uber and Microsoft, two of his latest big bets. So I think he's been waiting for this thing to have a breakout. Mate, you don't even watch television. That's fair, but I still feel like pop culture-wise, you should know the biggest hits on Netflix. And outside of Squid Games, like seriously, what is the big thing that was on Netflix this year? No one can name it. I should see like 100 comments of the same thing being spammed, but no one can name it. Like, don't give me Stranger Things. That wasn't it. SoFi making a little move. I think they had a season 2 of Beef. Beef was actually a good show in 2023. I actually did watch it. That was a really good show. But I don't know if season 2 of Beef is what's getting people to subscribe to Netflix. Yeah, the Kevin Hart roast, come on, bro. That's not, we're talking about getting, dude, Squid Games bought 4 million subscribers for Netflix in a month. That's how crazy it was in 2021. We're talking about those types of moments. It hasn't had it. It has not had it in 2026. It just hasn't happened this year. Reddit 177, that's up a nice 10%. So Zeta's getting hit today. Nokia's getting hit. Redwire getting hit. Redwire, Rocket Lab up. Keel up. Robinhood up. Palantir up. Grab up. And then Reddit up. So again, diversified. SoFi also up. Is Meta at 600? Meta almost at 600. She's trying. We have a decent chunk of these names at least starting to go up. Space, Virgin Galactic, that's down. Lunar, that is also down. Everyone's watching your stream, not Netflix, so it's the wrong audience to ask this question. That's a good point. Speaking of people watching the stream, dude, I am really getting excited about this idea of having a full production studio starting 2027. I'm like really thinking of it. The more I think about it, the more I'm just like, dude, how cool would it be to have a full-on studio with multiple camera angles? You could have guests that actually come in person, just so many different ways to build a real produced show every day, twice a day. Imagine it's not, just me in this background. Imagine it's a whole set. I think it would be crazy. And I feel like I've been doing the streaming in my room for 3-4 years. I'm I think we could take it to the next level. And so I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm starting to make a lot more calls, talk to a lot more people. What are the logistical challenges to make it happen? Because if we could, I think it would just be so awesome. Mitch joining the CapEx train. I don't know, man. I think it would just be fun. It would be the same stream. It would just be a different visual experience, I think it would be cool. Microsoft, almost 400. Trying to break. Robinhood got hit below 100 again. SpaceX, is that still 170? SpaceX, yeah, 173. Just use a green screen. To be honest, that could solve all the problems. Just use a green screen. That's fair. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I think it would just be more fun. But then again, it would be a lot more challenges. I'd have to go to New York every day. There'd just be a lot of shit to make it happen. But we got to see what it could turn out to be. Okay, SpaceX is still holding. Do we have any Iran updates? Israeli drones target a motorcycle in southern Lebanon. Okay. I really hope that's not going to be what messes everything up. But once again, you do have some of those headlines. Anthropic to meet with Trump admin today over Mythos. Okay. Looks like Anthropic is going to have to figure out how to get Fable 5 unbanned to get this thing moving. Targeted a motorcycle. Okay, I would hope that's not going to cause an issue. Again, yesterday's attack also, from what was reported, no one died on the Lebanon attack, but Trump was still pretty pissed. This is what he told Fox.
He believes a deal with Iran will be signed in the next 2 to 3 hours. I asked him about the Israeli strikes earlier today against Hezbollah in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. He tells me he spoke on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, asking him, "What the F are you doing?" He told the prime minister not to conduct additional strikes against Hezbollah so that it doesn't affect this deal from moving forward. Now, the Israelis are bracing for the possibility of incoming Iranian ballistic missile fire, according to the IDF. And President Trump tells Fox News he will ask Iran not to respond with missile fire toward Israel, with this deal on the horizon expected to be signed tonight. All of this takes.
And it didn't get signed last night. It's now being signed on Friday of this week, but it looks like it is a deal that will go through. SPY, wow, 754, folks. Talk about breaking out here. Oh my, she's breaking. Crude 2 cents away from below 80. Again, it feels like a little bit of a sweet spot that we're in right now. Maybe we need to see some of these gains actually hold over the next coming days, but I mean, again, the market doesn't give Robinhood 100 if the market's not feeling bullish. That's for damn sure. It's a proxy on the bull market. Obviously, oil coming down below 80 would be what we really need. You haven't seen the Palantier's breakout yet. You haven't seen the Rock Labs fully get back to that 120, 130 range. Obviously, you haven't seen NVIDIA really make a move yet, but it feels like it's warming up. Feels like it's warming up. VG should be down today. VG 1217. That's down 7. SpaceX needs to break 176 for us to see this actually get a new high. 2.27 trillion. Where's the heat map? Where's the heat map? Yeah, dude, we're pretty great. Look, the only thing that's red today is really oil and a little bit of the industrials. Everything else is freaking fully green. Look at this. Consumer defensives relatively flat. They're not even that red. Coke's down 2%, but whatever. Exxon and Chevron are down. Materials are up. Healthcare is basically flat. Everything else that's holding up the broader market is green. Mid, I don't think SpaceX is going any higher from here. You know, I think there could still be a lot of excitement in it. Obviously, I'm not in it. Did people sell? Did people trade it at all? Like, did people sell at 150 or something? Or buy at 150 and then sell it higher than here? Or if you got allocated in the IPO, have you sold yet from the IPO at 135? Because if you got the IPO allocation, then it's up a lot. I mean, it's up $40 a share almost. Google announces $1.5 billion investment to expand data centers in Alabama. Okay. More data centers in Alabama. OpenAI committing $50 million to support nonprofits engaging with AI. That's interesting. OpenAI giving $50 million to some nonprofits, but Google $1.5 billion in Alabama. More data centers. I don't know, man. If this data center spend doesn't slow down, do we really have to have an ugly summer here? Google 371 now, high of days. As that continues to go green. Let me check crude again here and see if we're actually falling down. Yes, tomorrow trading for options do open up. Crude is 80.6, so it hasn't fully gone below 80 yet, but it's trying. G Money, thank you for being the super chat. Can I be the welder for your studio? You absolutely can be the welder for the studio. We're going to need a decent amount of welding. Lebanon's Hezbollah official says group's right to self-defense remains in place as long as occupation and aggression continue. All right, man, we got to see if this deal actually gets signed on Friday, and particularly what Lebanon and Israel are going to have to say about it. We got more JD Vance right here. Let's pull him up and see what he's saying as well. Again, the thing that confused me this morning was he said that, it's about still negotiating, which means there's still some parts obviously that haven't fully been resolved yet.
And to turn over a new leaf in that relationship. What the president really wanted to do, not just with the last 6 weeks, but really the last year and a half of Iran policy, is to get us to a place where we could change our relationship fundamentally with the Iranians and ensure that they never have a nuclear weapon. We feel that we're at that place now. We're, of course, going to continue to verify that, continue to negotiate and talk to the Iranians. But this is a big day for the American people, a big win for everybody who cares about basic peace and stability in the Middle East.
Even some of the president's closest allies are raising questions, though, about the agreement. Lindsey Graham, the senator from South Carolina, said, "I'm somewhat concerned that Iran's view of the agreement seems different than what the American negotiating team is claiming right now. There do seem to be some significant differences between what we're seeing in the Iranian media. They say they're going to be seeing release of assets as the agreement is signed. They're not going to sign the agreement unless those assets are released. Is that true?"
No, George, it's not true. And I'd caution Lindsey Graham and anybody else not to believe the hardliner propaganda in Iran, but to believe what's actually in the agreement. But we'll be releasing the text this week. And what everybody will see is that Iran doesn't get a dime of money unless they perform their obligations. And the money that we're talking about is fundamentally sanctions relief. We're not giving them American money. Not a single dollar of American money will go to Iran. But what we are saying, George, is we're willing to give significant sanctions relief if the Iranians make the kind of long-term commitments that are necessary to be a normal country, to give up their nuclear weapons program, to stop funding terrorist activities all over the Middle East. And one of the really interesting things, George, you hear people compare this negatively or positively to the JCPOA of the Obama administration. There are all of these ways I could explain that this deal is fundamentally better for the American people than the JCPOA. But the fundamental difference is that the Gulf Coast Coalition, our Arab partners in the region, they hated the JCPOA because they felt that it emboldened Iran to be a bad actor. They love this deal because they feel that it's going to create a totally new dynamic in the Middle East. That's a great testament to what the president and the entire team has accomplished. Again, we got to verify here, George. This is not going to be a short-term solution. This is going to require a lot of engagement and diplomacy. But if the Iranians...
You got JD hedging his bets pretty hard right here. Diplomacy, negotiations, it's not going to be short-term. Whatever ends up getting signed on Friday, I think it's pretty obvious is not the final version of how this is resolved. But if it's enough to open the strait and relieve some sanctions and get rid of the naval blockade, then it's enough for the markets to move up. Is it enough to say we officially have a deal? Honestly, probably not. But, if all we care about is the markets, then maybe it's enough for the markets to perceptually move on from this.
Meet us. I think this is going to be a totally new direction for them, for the United States, and for the whole region.
Just to be clear, the Iranians signed this deal on Friday. They will not be receiving any sanctions relief, not receive any assets upon signing of this deal.
Well, we already signed the deal digitally yesterday, and there's been no money released, and that won't change, George. Again, this is a performance-based thing. If we see the Iranians making, for example, taking action to eliminate their stockpile of enriched material, then yes, sanctions relief will follow. If we see the Iranians taking action to allow the kind of verification regime that we need to see to know that they're not going to build a nuclear weapon, yes, sanctions relief will follow. So this is really about walking down a pathway here where the Iranians will be welcomed into the world economy if they do the right thing. And George, we have to remember, their economy is fundamentally destroyed. Their nuclear program is fundamentally destroyed. If they don't do the right things, if they don't allow the verification regime, they're never going to have the money to rebuild their nuclear program to begin with. So this is fundamentally a win-win for the American people. What the president has said is he wants it to be a win for the Iranian people as well, but that requires some real trust building and some real positive conduct from the Iranian political system. We're going to see if that happens. If it does, they're absolutely going to find the president of the United States and the entire team a willing partner to make their country more prosperous.
You mentioned the support.
Yeah, we don't have a deal. we don't have any fucking deal, bro. There is no fucking. But who cares? At this point, it doesn't matter. As long as the market thinks we have as long as the stock market believes there is a deal, that's all that matters. That was a bunch of bullshit. That was 3 minutes of pure bullshit. Can you imagine being the Iranian foreign ministry intern that gets the DocuSign email of like, hey, sign this digitally? That's crazy. We signed digitally? What do you mean you signed digitally? What digital, yeah, there's no deal, bro. There's no fucking deal. You're not even going to release any of the frozen. How is there a deal that Iran somehow agrees to and they're not going to get any of their frozen assets back? Like, that would be one of the core things they would be excited to get, like the money that has been frozen for 15 years. Having said that, I think JD might be right that it's like a framework for steps in the future to get to a deal. It requires a lot of variables of everyone being a good actor. And obviously the Strait of Hormuz is open today, so Iran is at least showing that they have that sense of willingness to cooperate. The U.S. got rid of the naval blockade. They have that sense of willingness to cooperate. Is it a legit deal that stops them from proliferating nuclear weapons for the next 20 years? Based on what JD said, it's hard to believe there's any actual terms that are going to be respected in any meaningful way. Now, again, I kind of don't care about that. I care about the stock market. And as long as the stock market agrees that the Strait of Hormuz will stay open indefinitely, then all the other political elements of the deal can be figured out in a different time. And as long as it doesn't affect Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz again, as investors, we really don't have to worry about it, as Reddit goes up 11% right here. But it kind of doesn't seem like there's a deal. I mean, whatever DocuSign they signed yesterday, I don't know if that's official yet. Micron almost breaking all-time highs right there, 1,071. Western Digital, that's up 14%. Credo's up 2.5. Meta finally flipping green here. Google 370. SpaceX still trying to get above 175. Has not fully got there yet, but it is trying. Ben, thanks for the super chat. I'm a long-term SpaceX holder. We'll keep holding. Tesla and SpaceX merger will push the stocks up with premium coming to Tesla holders. I think there will be a merger. I think Elon is basically hinting at it in a lot of different ways. Question is, how long does it take? And maybe it happens sooner than later. Tesla right there, 407. But I do think that can end up happening. So look, regardless of if there's a deal or not, as long as this whole move doesn't reverse on the assumption that the Strait of Hormuz gets closed again, oil spikes up again, I think we're kind of out of the woods. And whatever they sign in Switzerland, even if it's some fake MOU to commemorate, both sides' willingness to cooperate, if they get rid of the blockade, you open up the strait, the rest of it is all politics that will be debated for the next decade on if this deal was better than the Obama deal, or like that'll all be debated. But for the market's interpretation of this, we just have to move on. And it looks like, based on what JD said, we're at least somewhat moving on here, which hopefully allows this to keep going. Yeah, he said performance. It was performance-based. I was like, okay, hold on. So that's not something set in stone. That means Iran has to really cooperate for you guys to even think of giving them. But if they're willing to cooperate, then yeah, I guess that's how the contract's going to be routed. So I'd imagine on Friday, which the market is closed on Friday. So we'll have a basis points episode out on Friday, but we will not have any streams on Friday. But although maybe we do stream on Friday if they're streaming the signing ceremony. I don't know if it's going to be public. If they do, maybe we stream that. And we can kind of see on Monday then how the market cooperates. Palantir, are we getting a move? 134, up 4%. Again, some of the software names coming back out to play. ServiceNow, Salesforce, Reddit, obviously some of them making moves. Shopify's up. Microsoft trying to get back to 400. The fact that Microsoft's still below 400 is crazy, but it is. ASTS up 2. And then you got the S&P potentially getting ready to push 755. All right, folks, that is it for me. I think on the market close, we'll get some more updates on what's going on with the G7 summit and if anything happens from there. We're also going to have a partner from Founders Fund joining the show on the market close. Early investor of SpaceX. I'll tell you his name right now. Some of you guys might know him. Delian. He is a co-founder of Varda Space, another space company, private space company, and one of the earlier partners at Founders Fund. So we've been reaching out to a lot more guests, trying to get a lot more perspectives on the show. And he'll be on the show on Friday. We'll try to get his take on SpaceX valuation, how it's ultimately being perceived by the market. And hopefully we get some decent analysis there as we get into it. I do have Robinhood in my draft. For those asking for the stock draft update, we have now pushed 70%, folks. Look at that. We're down 74% on Duolingo, and we're up 74% on the P&L. Hoodie really coming in clutch on the last day. We bought it at 76 June of last year. Steve's at 62. Tanner's at 14. Matt's at 57. Chris at 43. It looks like Hood pulling away right here into the hundreds might be what brings it home for us. And so we will have this draft ending out over the next 2 days. All right, word of the day. What do we got? Word of the day. We have no earnings today. No earnings. So we'll be just looking at all the different headlines we have. Again, we'll have a guest on the show in the market close. We'll see if we can get some of these G7 updates, see if the market gets a rally even further from here. Again, I'm looking for the bear case as much as you guys are. If this war is over, I think it's even more important for us to really search for what is the bear case, how does this fall apart? And I think we should be ruthlessly trying to figure it out. But it's a little bit of a sweet spot if the labor market holds up and we end up getting some of those cuts. Okay, word of the day. There's no way in hell this is the... This is... What is... Dude, what the hell is this? Having well-shaped, attractive buttocks. Callipygian. The ancient sculpture was... This has nothing to do with the stock market. Why is this the word that... Dude, what just happened? Did OpenAI update their model? Usually gives me a word that's related to the stock market. I promise I am not asking my ChatGPT about attractive buttocks. I can tell you that. I was learning about liquidity sweeps last night, so this damn sure isn't based on my history. What is this, bro? Why would they give this word? This is a weird... Like, look at the word on Friday. They were talking about a CEO in the sentence. It always has to do with markets and stuff. Callipygian. The ancient sculpture was celebrated for its Callipygian proportions. Okay, I'm not even kidding, bro. I asked ChatGPT about stocks. Like, that's so weird. Why are they... My prompt was give me another one. My prompt wasn't like weird. Okay, I'm definitely saying this word wrong. How do you say this shit?
Callipygian.
Callipygian. Callipygian, bro. It knows your text to Davis. Dude, like I'm not like, no bullshit. I talked to ChatGPT about stocks and like I'm trying to get better at technical analysis and trade. Look at this. Literally look at this. Look at this, bro. These are my last 5 freaking... Look at this. I was learning about prop firms. I was learning about bull and bear wicks. 21 EMA for trend analysis. Look at my history. Like, it's like, this is weird, bro. That's the weirdest word I've gotten from ChatGPT ever. Especially because it usually doesn't show that stuff. But regardless, this is...
Callipygian.
Callipygian. You know, I mean, trying to make an analogy here with how do I use this word to describe the S&P 500 is it's not catching on right now. I'll try. So I say the S&P 500 has a nice Callipygian, but like, you know, I need to work on maturing the joke. So I'll figure that out. But there you go. We're green. 754.58. Maybe got some back on that S&P 500. That's got a nice little Callipygian as that goes up. Nice little 2%. This is incredible. All right, folks. I'll be back on the close. Thank you all for being here. Another week. We're here. The Knicks are champions after 53 years. We got a green S&P. Deal or no deal. Markets love it. Oil's coming down. Hopefully we hold on to this and we can keep this momentum going throughout the rest of the summer. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys on the market close and we'll keep going from there. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.